Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 495. Narrated by Al-Miswar bin Makrama and Marwan bin al-Hakam, one of them said more than his friend the Prophet set out in the company of more than 1,000 of his companions in the year of Al-Hudaybiyah, and when he reached Dhul Hulayfa, he garlanded his hati, i.e. sacrificing animal, assumed the state of Ihram for Umrah from that place and sent a spy of his from Huzayh tribe. The Prophet proceeded until he reached a village called Gadar al-Ashtat. There his spy came and said, "The Quraysh, infidels, have collected a great number of people against you, and they have collected against you the Ethiopians, and they will fight with you, and will stop you from entering the Kaaba and prevent you." The Prophet said, "O people! Give me your opinion. Do you recommend that I should destroy the families and offspring of those who want to stop us from the Kaaba? If they should come to us, for peace, then Allah will destroy a spy from the pagans, or otherwise we will leave them in a miserable state." On that Abu Bakr said, "O Allah Apostle! You have come with the intention of visiting this house, i.e. Kaaba, and you do not want to kill or fight anybody. So proceed to it, and whoever should stop us from it, we will fight him." On that the Prophet said, "Proceed on, in the name of Allah." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 496. Narrated by Urwa bin Zubair, that he heard Marwan bin al-Hakam and al-Miswar bin Makrama relating one of the events that happened to Allah's Apostle in the Umrah of Al-Hudaybiyah. They said, when Allah's Apostle concluded the truce with Suhail bin Amr on the day of Al-Hudaybiyah, one of the conditions which Suhail bin Amr stipulated, was his saying, to the Prophet, "If anyone from us, i.e. infidels, ever comes to you, though he has embraced your religion, you should return him to us, and should not interfere between us and him." Suhail refused to conclude the truce with Allah's Apostle except on this condition. The believers disliked this condition and got disgusted with it and argued about it. But when Suhail refused to conclude the truce with Allah's Apostle except on that condition, Allah's Apostle concluded it. Accordingly, Allah's Apostle then returned Abu Jandal bin Suhail to his father, Suhail bin Amr, and returned every man coming to him from them during that period even if he was a Muslim. The believing women emigrants came to Medina, and Kulthum, the daughter of Uqba bin Abi Mu'ayt, was one of those who came to Allah's Apostle, and she was an adult at that time. Her relatives came, asking Allah's Apostle to return her to them, and in this connection, Allah revealed the verses dealing with the believing women. Aisha said, Allah's Apostle used to test all the believing women who migrated to him, with the following verse, "O Prophet! When the believing women come to you, to give the pledge of allegiance to you." 60.12. Urwa's uncle said, "We were informed when Allah ordered his Apostle to return to the pagans what they had given to their wives who lately migrated to Medina, and we were informed that Abu Basir, relating the whole narration." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 497. Narrated by Nafi, Abdullah bin Umar set out for Umrah during the period of afflictions, and he said, "If I should be stopped from visiting the Kaaba, I will do what we did when we were with Allah's Apostle." He assumed Ihram for Umrah in the year of Al-Hudaybiyah. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 498. Narrated by Nafi, Ibn Umar assumed Ihram and said, "If something should intervene between me and the Kaaba, then I will do what the Prophet did when the Quraysh infidels intervened between him and the Kaaba." Then Ibn Umar recited, "You have indeed in Allah's Apostle a good example to follow." 33.21. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 499. Narrated by Nafi, one of Abdullah's sons said to Abdullah bin Umar, "I wish you would stay this year, and not perform Hajj, as I am afraid that you will not be able to reach the Kaaba." On that he, i.e. Abdullah bin Umar, said, "We went out with the Prophet for Umrah, and when the Quraysh infidel intervened between us and the Kaaba, the Prophet slaughtered his hadi and shaved his head, and his companions cut short their hair. Then Abdullah bin Umar said, I make you witness that I have intended to perform Umrah, and if I am allowed to reach the Kaaba, I will perform the Tawaf, and if something, i.e. obstacles, intervene between me and the Kaaba, then I will do what Allah's apostle did. Then after going for a while, he said, I consider the ceremonies of both Umrah and Hajj as one and the same, so I would like you to witness that I have intended to perform Hajj along with my Umrah. So he performed only one Tawaf and one Sa'i, between Safa and Marwa, and finished the Ihram of both Umrah and Hajj. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 500. Narrated by Nafi, the people used to say that Ibn Umar had embraced Islam before Umar. This is not true. What happened is that Umar sent Abdullah to bring his horse from an Ansari man so as to fight on it. At that time the people were giving the pledge of allegiance to Allah's apostle near the tree, and Umar was not aware of that. So Abdullah bin Umar gave the pledge of allegiance to the Prophet, and went to take the horse and brought it to Umar. While Umar was putting on the armor to get ready for fighting, Abdullah informed him that the people were giving the pledge of allegiance to Allah's apostle beneath the tree. So Umar set out and Abdullah accompanied him till he gave the pledge of allegiance to Allah's apostle, and it was this event that made people say that Ibn Umar had embraced Islam before Umar. Abdullah bin Umar added, the people were along with the Prophet on the day of Al-Hudaybiyah spreading in the shade of the trees. Suddenly the people surrounded the Prophet and started looking at him. Umar said, O Abdullah, go and see why the people are encircling Allah's apostle and looking at him. Abdullah bin Umar then saw the people giving the pledge of allegiance to the Prophet. So he also gave the pledge of allegiance and returned to Umar, who went out in his turn and gave the pledge of allegiance to the Prophet. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 501. Narrated by Abdullah bin Abi Awfa, we were in the company of the Prophet when he performed the Umrah. He performed the Tawaf and we did the same, he offered the prayer and we also offered the prayer with him. Then he performed the Sa'i between Safa and Marwa and we were guarding him against the people of Mecca so that nobody should harm him. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 502. Narrated by Abu Wa'il, when Sal bin Hunayf returned from the battle of Siffin, we went to ask him as to why he had come back. He replied, you should not consider me a coward, but blame your opinions. I saw myself on the day of Abu Jandal, inclined to fight, and if I had the power of refusing the order of Allah's apostle then, I would have refused it, and fought the infidels bravely. Allah and his apostle know what is convenient, better. Whenever we put our swords on our shoulders for any matter that terrified us, our swords led us to an easy agreeable solution before the present situation of disagreement and dispute between the Muslims. When we mend the breach in one side, it opened in another, and we do not know what to do about it. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 503. Narrated by Ka'b bin Ujayra, the Prophet came to me at the time of Al-Hudaybiyah pledge while lice were falling on my face. He said, are the lice of your head troubling you? I said, yes. He said, shave your head and fast for 3 days, or feed 6 poor persons, or slaughter a sheep as sacrifice. The sub-narrator, Ayyub said, I do not know with which of these 3 options he started. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 504. Narrated by Ka'b bin Ujayra, we were in the company of Allah's apostle at Al-Hudaybiyah in the state of Ihram and the pagans did not allow us to proceed to the Kaaba. I had thick hair and lice started falling on my face. The Prophet passed by me and said, are the lice of your head troubling you? I replied, yes. The sub-narrator added, then the following divine verse was revealed, and if any one of you is ill or has an ailment in his scalp, necessitating shaving, must pay a ransom, fida, of either fasting or feeding the poor, or offering a sacrifice. 2.196 Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 505. Narrated by Anas, some people of the tribe of Uql and Urayna arrived at Medina to meet the Prophet and embraced Islam and said, O Allah's Prophet! We are the owners of milch livestock, i.e. Bedouins, and not farmers, i.e. countrymen. They found the climate of Medina unsuitable for them. So Allah's apostle ordered that they should be provided with some milch camels and a shepherd, and ordered them to go out of Medina and to drink the camels' milk and urine, as medicine. So they set out, and when they reached Al-Hara, they reverted to heathenism after embracing Islam, and killed the shepherd of the Prophet and drove away the camels. When this news reached the Prophet, he sent some people in pursuit of them. So they were caught and brought back to the Prophet. The Prophet gave his orders in their concern. So their eyes were branded with pieces of iron, and their hands and legs were cut off, and they were left away in horror till they died in that state of theirs. See Hadith 234 Vol 1. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 506. Narrated by Abu Raja, the freed slave of Abu Kilaba, who was with Abu Kilaba in Sham. Umar bin Abdul Aziz consulted the people, saying, What do you think of Kazima? They said, It is a right judgment, which Allah's apostle and the caliphs before you acted on. Abu Kilaba was behind Umar's bed. And Basa bin said, But what about the narration concerning the people of Urayna? Abu Kilaba said, Anas bin Malik narrated it to me, and then narrated the whole story. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 507. Narrated by Salama bin Alaqwa, once I went, from Medina, towards Al-Gaba, before the first adhan of the Fajr prayer. The she-camels of Allah's apostle used to graze at a place called Dikarad. A slave of Abdurrahman bin Auf met me, on the way, and said, The she-camels of Allah's apostle had been taken away by force. I asked, Who had taken them? He replied, The people of Ghatafan. I made 3 loud cries, to the people of Medina, saying, O Sabaha! I made the people between the 2 mountains of Medina hear me. Then I rushed onward and caught up with the robbers while they were watering the camels. I started throwing arrows at them as I was a good archer, and I was saying, I am the son of Alaqwa, and today will perish the wicked people. I kept on saying like that till I restored the she-camels of the Prophet. I also snatched 30 burda, i.e. garments, from them. Then the Prophet and the other people came there, and I said, O Allah's Prophet! I have stopped the people of Ghatafan from taking water, and they are thirsty now. So send some people after them now. On that the Prophet said, O the son of Alaqwa! You have overpowered them, so forgive them. Then we all came back, and Allah's apostle seated me behind him on his she-camel till we entered Medina. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 508. Narrated by Suwaid bin An-Numan, I went out in the company of the Prophet in the year of Khaybar, and when we reached Es-Saba, which is the lower part of Khaybar, the Prophet offered the Asr prayer and then asked the people to collect the journey food. Nothing was brought but sa'ik, which the Prophet ordered to be moistened with water, and then he ate it, and we also ate it. Then he got up to offer the Maghrib prayer. He washed his mouth, and we too washed our mouths, and then he offered the prayer without repeating his ablution. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 509. Narrated by Salama bin Alaqwa, we went out to Khaybar in the company of the Prophet. While we were proceeding at night, a man from the group said to Amir, O Amir! Won't you let us hear your poetry? Amir was a poet, so he got down and started reciting for the people poetry that kept pace with the camel's footsteps, saying, O Allah! Without you we would not have been guided on the right path, neither would we have given in charity, nor would we have prayed. So please forgive us what we have committed, i.e. our defects. Let all of us be sacrificed for your cause, and send sakinah, i.e. calmness, upon us to make our feet firm when we meet our enemy, and if they will call us towards an unjust thing, we will refuse. The infidels have made a hue and cry to ask others help against us. The Prophet on that, asked, Who is that, camel, driver, reciting poetry? The people said, He is Amir bin Aliquay. Then the Prophet said, May Allah bestow His mercy on him. A man amongst the people said, O Allah's Prophet, has martyrdom been granted to him? Would that you let us enjoy his company longer. Then we reached and besieged Khaybar till we were afflicted with severe hunger. Then Allah helped the Muslims conquer it, i.e. Khaybar. In the evening of the day of the conquest of the city, the Muslims made huge fires. The Prophet said, What are these fires? For cooking what are you making the fire? The people replied, For cooking meat. He asked, What kind of meat? They, i.e. people, said, The meat of donkeys. The Prophet said, Throw away the meat and break the pots. Some man said, O Allah's Apostle, shall we throw away the meat and wash the pots instead? He said, Yes, you can do that too. So when the army files were arranged in rows, for the clash, Amir's sword was short and he aimed at the leg of a Jew to strike it, but the sharp blade of the sword returned to him and injured his own knee, and that caused him to die. When they returned from the battle, Allah's Apostle saw me, in a sad mood. He took my hand and said, What is bothering you? I replied, Let my father and mother be sacrificed for you. The people say that the deeds of Amir are lost. The Prophet said, Whoever says so, is mistaken, for Amir has got a double reward. The Prophet raised 2 fingers and added, He, i.e. Amir, was a persevering struggler in the cause of Allah, and there are few Arabs who achieved the like of good deeds Amir had done. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 510. Narrated by Anas, Allah's Apostle reached Khaybar at night, and it was his habit that, whenever he reached the enemy at night, he will not attack them till it was morning. When it was morning, the Jews came out with their spades and baskets, and when they saw him, i.e. the Prophet, they said, Muhammad. By Allah, Muhammad and his army. The Prophet said, Khaybar is destroyed, for whenever we approach a hostile nation to fight, then evil will be the morning for those who have been warned. Narrated Anas bin Malik, we reached Khaybar early in the morning, and the inhabitants of Khaybar came out carrying their spades, and when they saw the Prophet they said, Muhammad. By Allah, Muhammad and his army. The Prophet said, Allahu Akbar. Khaybar is destroyed, for whenever we approach a hostile nation to fight, then evil will be the morning for those who have been warned. We then got the meat of donkeys, and intended to eat it, but an announcement was made by the announcer of the Prophet, Allah and his Apostle forbid you to eat the meat of donkeys, as it is an impure thing. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 511. Narrated by Anas bin Malik, someone came to Allah's Apostles and said, The donkeys have been eaten by the Muslims. The Prophet kept quiet. Then the man came again and said, The donkeys have been eaten. The Prophet kept quiet. The man came to him the 3rd time and said, The donkeys have been consumed. On that the Prophet ordered an announcer to announce to the people, Allah and his Apostle forbid you to eat the meat of donkeys. Then the cooking pots were upset while the meat was still boiling in them. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 512. Narrated by Anas, the Prophet offered the Fajr prayer near Khaybar when it was still dark, and then said, Allahu Akbar. Khaybar is destroyed, for whenever we approach a hostile nation to fight, then evil will be the morning for those who have been warned. Then the inhabitants of Khaybar came out running on the roads. The Prophet had their warriors killed, their offspring and women taken as captives. Safiyyah was amongst the captives. She first came in the share of Daya al-Khalai, but later on she belonged to the Prophet. The Prophet made her manumission as her mar. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 513. Narrated by Abdul Aziz bin Suhaib, Anas bin Malik said, the Prophet took Safiya as a captive. He manumit her and married her. Thabit asked Anas, what did he give her as mar, i.e. marriage gift? Anas replied, her mar was herself, for he manumit her. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 514. Narrated by Sal bin Sa'd as-Sa'di, Allah's apostle, and his army, encountered the pagans and the two armies, fought, and then Allah's apostle returned to his army camps and the others, i.e. the enemy, returned to their army camps. Amongst the companions of the Prophet there was a man who could not help pursuing any single isolated pagan to strike him with his sword. Somebody said, none has benefited the Muslims today more than so and so. On that Allah's apostle said, he is from the people of the hellfire certainly. A man amongst the people, i.e. Muslims, said, I will accompany him, to know the fact. So he went along with him, and whenever he stopped with him, and whenever he hastened with him. The brave man then got wounded severely, and seeking to die at once, he planted his sword into the ground and put its point against his chest in between his breasts, and then threw himself on it and committed suicide. On that the person, who was accompanying the deceased all the time, came to Allah's apostle and said, I testify that you are the apostle of Allah. The Prophet said, why is that, what makes you say so? He said, it is concerning the man whom you have already mentioned as one of the dwellers of the hellfire. The people were surprised by your statement, and I said to them, I will try to find out the truth about him for you. So I went out after him, and he was then inflicted with a severe wound, and because of that, he hurried to bring death upon himself by planting the handle of his sword into the ground and directing its tip towards his chest between his breasts, and then he threw himself over it and committed suicide. Allah's apostle then said, a man may do what seem to the people as the deeds of the dwellers of paradise, but he is from the dwellers of the hellfire, and another may do what seem to the people as the deeds of the dwellers of the hellfire, but he is from the dwellers of paradise. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 515. Narrated by Abu Huraira, we witnessed the battle of Khaybar. Allah's apostle said about one of those who were with him and who claimed to be a Muslim, this man is from the dwellers of the hellfire. When the battle started, that fellow fought so violently and bravely that he received plenty of wounds. Some of the people were about to doubt the Prophet's statement, but the man, feeling the pain of his wounds, put his hand into his quiver and took out of it some arrows with which he slaughtered himself, i.e. committed suicide. Then some men amongst the Muslims came hurriedly and said, O Allah's apostle, Allah has made your statement true, so and so has committed suicide. The Prophet said, O so and so, get up and make an announcement that none but a believer will enter paradise, and that Allah may support the religion with an unchanged evil, wicked man. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 516. Narrated by Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, when Allah's apostle fought the battle of Khaybar, or when Allah's apostle went towards it, whenever the people passed over a high place overlooking a valley, they raised their voices saying, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. None has the right to be worshipped except Allah. On that Allah's apostle said to them, lower your voices, for you are not calling a deaf or an absent one, but you are calling a hearer who is near and is with you. I was behind the riding animal of Allah's apostle, and he heard me saying, there is neither might, nor power but with Allah. On that he said to me, O Abdullah bin Qais. I said, Labbaik. O Allah's apostle. He said, shall I tell you a sentence which is one of the treasures of paradise? I said, yes, O Allah's apostle. Let my father and mother be sacrificed for your sake. He said, it is, there is neither might nor power but with Allah. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 517. Narrated by Yazid bin Abi Ayyubaid, I saw the trace of a wound in Salama's leg. I said to him, O Abu Muslim, what is this wound? He said, this was inflicted on me on the day of Khaybar, and the people said, Salama has been wounded. Then I went to the Prophet and he puffed his saliva in it, i.e. the wound, thrice, and since then I have not had any pain in it till this hour. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 518. Narrated by Sahl, during one of his Ghazawat, the Prophet encountered the pagans, and the two armies fought, and then each of them returned to their army camps. Amongst the army of the Muslims there was a man who would follow every pagan separated from the army and strike him with his sword. It was said, O Allah's Apostle, none has fought so satisfactorily as so and so, namely, that brave Muslim. The Prophet said, he is from the dwellers of the hell-fire. The people said, who amongst us will be of the dwellers of paradise if this man is from the dwellers of the hell-fire? Then a man from amongst the people said, I will follow him and accompany him in his fast and slow movements. The brave man got wounded, and wanting to die at once, he put the handle of his sword on the ground and its tip in between his breasts, and then threw himself over it, committing suicide. Then the man, who had watched the deceased, returned to the Prophet and said, I testify that you are apostle of Allah. The Prophet said, what is this? The man told him the whole story. The Prophet said, a man may do what may seem to the people as the deeds of the dwellers of paradise, but he is of the dwellers of the hellfire, and a man may do what may seem to the people as the deeds of the dwellers of the hellfire, but he is from the dwellers of paradise. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 519. Narrated by Abu Imran, Anas looked at the people wearing tail sands, i.e. a special kind of head covering worn by Jews in old days. On that Anas said, at this moment they, i.e. those people, look like the Jews of Khaybar. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 520. Narrated by Salama, Ali remained behind the Prophet during the Ghazwa of Khaybar as he was suffering from eye trouble. He then said, how can I remain behind the Prophet, and followed him? So when he slept on the night of the conquest of Khaybar, the Prophet said, I will give the flag tomorrow, or tomorrow the flag will be taken by a man who is loved by Allah and his Apostle, and Khaybar will be conquered through him, with Allah's help. While every one of us was hopeful to have the flag, it was said, here is Ali, and the Prophet gave him the flag and Khaybar was conquered through him, with Allah's help. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 521. Narrated by Sahl bin Sa'd, on the day of Khaybar, Allah's Apostle said, tomorrow I will give this flag to a man through whose hands Allah will give us victory. He loves Allah and his Apostle, and he is loved by Allah and his Apostle. The people remained that night, wondering as to who would be given it. In the morning the people went to Allah's Apostle and every one of them was hopeful to receive it, i.e. the flag. The Prophet said, where is Ali bin Abi Talib? It was said, he is suffering from eye trouble, O Allah's Apostle. He said, send for him. Ali was brought and Allah's Apostle spat in his eye and invoked good upon him. So Ali was cured as if he never had any trouble. Then the Prophet gave him the flag. Ali said, O Allah's Apostle, I will fight with them till they become like us. Allah's Apostle said, proceed, and do not hurry. When you enter their territory, call them to embrace Islam and inform them of Allah's rights which they should observe, for by Allah, even if a single man is led on the right path of Islam, by Allah through you, then that will be better for you than the nice red camels. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 522. Narrated by Anas bin Malik, we arrived at Khaybar, and when Allah helped his Apostle to open the fort, the beauty of Safiyyah bint Huyay bin Akhtar, whose husband had been killed while she was a bride, was mentioned to Allah's Apostle. The Prophet selected her for himself, and set out with her, and when we reached a place called Sid as-Saba, Safiyyah became clean from her menses, then Allah's Apostle married her. hais, i.e. an Arabian dish, was prepared on a small leather mat. Then the Prophet said to me, I invite the people around you. So that was the marriage banquet of the Prophet and Safiyyah. Then we proceeded towards Medina, and I saw the Prophet, making for her a kind of cushion with his cloak behind him, on his camel. He then sat beside his camel and put his knee for Safiyyah to put her foot on, in order to ride, on the camel. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 523. Narrated by Anas bin Malik, the Prophet stayed with Safiyyah bint Huyay for 3 days on the way of Khaybar, where he consummated his marriage with her. Safiyyah was amongst those who were ordered to use a veil. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 524. Narrated by Anas, the Prophet stayed for 3 nights between Khaybar and Medina and was married to Safiyyah. I invited the Muslim to his marriage banquet, and there was neither meat nor bread in that banquet, but the Prophet ordered Bilal to spread the leather mats on which dates, dried yogurt, and butter were put. The Muslims said amongst themselves, will she, i.e. Safiyyah, be one of the mothers of the believers, i.e. one of the wives of the Prophet, or just a lady captive of what his right hand possesses? Some of them said, if the Prophet makes her observe the veil, then she will be one of the mothers of the believers, i.e. one of the Prophet's wives, and if he does not make her observe the veil, then she will be his lady slave. So when he departed, he made a place for her behind him, on his, and made her observe the veil. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 525. Narrated by Abdullah bin Mughaffal, while we were besieging Khaybar, a person threw a leather container containing some fat, and I ran to take it. Suddenly I looked behind, and behold, the Prophet was there. So I felt shy to take it then. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 526. Narrated by Ibn Umar, on the day of Khaybar, Allah's apostle forbade the eating of garlic and the meat of donkeys. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 527. Narrated by Ali bin Abi Talib, on the day of Khaybar, Allah's apostle forbade the mut'a, i.e. temporary marriage, and the eating of donkey meat. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 528. Narrated by Ibn Umar, on the day of Khaybar, Allah's apostle forbade the eating of donkey meat. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 529. Narrated by Ibn Umar, Allah's apostle forbade the eating of donkey meat. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 530. Narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah, on the day of Khaybar, Allah's apostle forbade the eating of donkey meat and allowed the eating of horse meat. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 531. Narrated by Ibn Abi Awfa, we were afflicted with severe hunger on the day of Khaybar. While the cooking pots were boiling and some of the food was well cooked, the announcer of the Prophet came to say, do not eat anything the donkey meat, and upset the cooking pots. We then thought that the Prophet had prohibited such food because the kumis had not been taken out of it. Some others said, he prohibited the meat of donkeys from the point of view of principle, because donkeys used to eat dirty things. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 532. Narrated by Al-Bara and Abdullah bin Abi al-Awfa, that when they were in the company of the Prophet, they got some donkeys which they slaughtered and cooked. Then the announcer of the Prophet said, turn the cooking pots upside down, i.e. throw out the meat. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 533. Narrated by Al-Bara and Ibn Abi Awfa, on the day of Khaybar, when the cooking pots were put on the fire, the Prophet said, turn the cooking pots upside down. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 534. Narrated by Al-Bara, we took part in a ghazwa with the Prophet, same as hadith number 533. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 535. Narrated by Al-Bara bin Azib, during the Ghazwa of Khaybar, the Prophet ordered us to throw away the meat of the donkeys whether it was still raw or cooked. He did not allow us to eat it later on. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 536. Narrated by Ibn Abbas, I do not know whether the Prophet forbade the eating of donkey meat, temporarily, because they were the beasts of burden for the people, and he disliked that their means of transportation should be lost, or he forbade it on the day of Khaybar permanently. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 537. Narrated by Ibn Umar, on the day of Khaybar, Allah's apostle divided the war booty of Khaybar, with the ratio of 2 shares for the horse and 1 share for the foot soldier. The sub-narrator, Nafi, explained this, saying, if a man had a horse, he was given 3 shares, and if he had no horse, then he was given 1 share. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 538. Narrated by Jubair bin Mut'im, Uthman bin Affan and I went to the Prophet and said, you had given Banu al-Muttalib from the Khumus of Khaybar's booty and left us in spite of the fact that we and Banu al-Muttalib are similarly related to you. The Prophet said, Banu Hashim and Banu al-Muttalib only are one and the same. So the Prophet did not give anything to Banu Abd Shams and Banu Nawfal. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 583. Narrated by Abdullah, when the Prophet entered Mecca on the day of the conquest, there were 360 idols around the Kaaba. The Prophet started striking them with a stick he had in his hand and was saying, truth has come and falsehood will neither start nor will it reappear. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 584. Narrated by Ibn Abbas, when Allah's apostle arrived in Mecca, he refused to enter the Kaaba while there were idols in it. So he ordered that they be taken out. The pictures of the prophets, Abraham and Ishmael, holding arrows of divination in their hands, were carried out. The Prophet said, may Allah ruin them, i.e. the infidels, for they knew very well that they, i.e. Abraham and Ishmael, never drew lots by these divination arrows. Then the Prophet entered the Kaaba and said, Allahu Akbar in all its directions, and came out and not offer any prayer therein. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 585. Narrated by Aisha, during the year of the conquest of Mecca, the Prophet entered Mecca through Kada, which was at the upper part of Mecca. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 586. Narrated by Hisham's father, during the year of the conquest of Mecca, the Prophet entered Mecca through its upper part through Kada. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 587. Narrated by Ibn Lila, none informed us that he saw the Prophet offering the duha, i.e. forenoon, prayer, except Ham, who mentioned that the Prophet took a bath in her house on the day of the conquest of Mecca, and then offered an 8-rakat prayer. She added, I never saw the Prophet offering a lighter prayer than that prayer, but he was performing perfect bowing and prostrations. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 588. Narrated by Ibn Abbas, Umar used to admit me into his house, along with the old men who had fought in the Badr battle. Some of them said to Umar, why do you allow this young man to enter with us, while we have sons of his own age? Umar said, you know what person he is. One day Umar called them and called me along with them. I had thought he called me on that day to show them something about me, i.e. my knowledge. Umar asked them, what do you say about the surah when comes the help of Allah and the conquest of Mecca, and you see mankind entering the religion of Allah, i.e. Islam, in crowds? So celebrate the praises of your Lord and ask for his forgiveness, truly, he is the one who accepts repentance and forgives. 110.1-3. Some of them replied, "We are ordered to praise Allah and repent to Him if we are helped and granted victory." Some said, "We do not know." Others kept quiet. Umar then said to me, "Do you say similarly?" I said, "No." Umar said, "What do you say then?" I said, "This verse indicates the approaching of the death of Allah's apostle, of which Allah informed him. When comes the help of Allah and the conquest, i.e. the conquest of Mecca, that will be the sign of your prophets, approaching death, so testify the uniqueness of your Lord, i.e. Allah, and praise Him and repent to Him as He is ready to forgive." On that, Umar said, "I do not know about it anything other than what you know." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 589. Narrated by Abu Shuraih, al-Ada'i, that he said to Amr bin Said while the latter was sending troops in batches to Mecca, "O chief, allow me to tell you a statement which Allah's apostle said on the second day of the conquest of Mecca. My 2 ears heard it and my heart remembered it and my 2 eyes saw him when he said it. He, i.e. the Prophet, praised Allah and then said, Mecca has been made a sanctuary by Allah and not by the people, so it is not lawful for a person, who believes in Allah and the last day, to shed blood in it, or to cut its trees. And if someone asks the permission to fight in Mecca because Allah's apostle was allowed to fight in it, say to him, Allah permitted his apostle and did not allow you, and even he, i.e. the apostle, was allowed for a short period of the day, and today it's, Mecca's sanctity has become the same as it was before, of old, so those who are present should inform those who are absent." This hadith. Then Abu Shuraih was asked, "What did Amr say to you?" Abu Shuraih said, "He said, I knew that better than you, O Abu Shuraih. The haram, i.e. Mecca, does not give refuge to a sinner or a fleeing murderer or a person running away after causing destruction." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 590. Narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah, that he heard Allah's apostle saying in the year of the conquest of Mecca, while he was in Mecca, Allah and his apostle have made the selling of wine, i.e. alcoholic drinks, unlawful. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 591. Narrated by Anas, we stayed, in Mecca, for 10 days along with the Prophet and used to offer shortened prayers, i.e. journey prayers. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 592. Narrated by Ibn Abbas, the Prophet stayed in Mecca for 19 days during which he prayed 2 rakat in each prayer. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 593. Narrated by Ikrimah, Ibn Abbas said, "We stayed for 19 days with Prophet on a journey during which we used to offer shortened prayers." Ibn Abbas added, "We offer the Kasra prayer, i.e. shortened prayer, if we stay up to 19 days as travelers, but if we stay longer, we offer complete prayers." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 594. Narrated by Az-Zuri, while we were in the company of the Ibn al-Musayyib, Sunan Abi Jamila informed us, a hadith, Abu Jamila said that he lived during the lifetime of the Prophet and that he had accompanied him, to Mecca, during the year of the conquest of Mecca. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 595. Narrated by Amr bin Salama, we were at a place which was a thoroughfare for the people, and the caravans used to pass by us and we would ask them, "What is wrong with the people? What is wrong with the people? Who is that man?" They would say, "That man claims that Allah has sent him, as an apostle, that he has been divinely inspired, that Allah has revealed to him such and such." I used to memorize that, divine, talk, and feel as if it was inculcated in my chest, i.e. mind, and the Arabs, other than Quraysh, delayed their conversion to Islam till the conquest of Mecca. They used to say, "Leave him, i.e. Muhammad, and his people Quraysh, if he overpowers them then he is a true prophet." So, When Mecca was conquered, then every tribe rushed to embrace Islam, and my father hurried to embrace Islam before the other members of my tribe. When my father returned from the Prophet to his tribe, he said, "By Allah, I have come to you from the Prophet for sure." The Prophet afterwards said to them, "Offer such and such prayer at such and such time, and when the time for the prayer becomes due, then one of you should pronounce the adhan for the prayer, and let the one amongst you who knows Quran most should lead the prayer." So they looked for such a person and found none who knew more Quran than I because of the Quranic material which I used to learn from the caravans. They therefore made me their imam, to lead the prayer, and at that time I was a boy of 6 or 7 years, wearing a burda, i.e. a black square garment, proved to be very short for me, and my body became partly naked. A lady from the tribe said, "Won't you cover the anus of your reciter for us?" So they bought a piece of cloth, and made a shirt for me. I had never been so happy with anything before as I was with that shirt. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 596. Narrated by Aisha, Utbah bin Abi Iwaqtas authorized his brother Sa'd to take the son of the slave girl of Zam'a into his custody. Utbah said to him, "He is my son." When Allah's apostle arrived in Mecca during the conquest of Mecca, Sa'd bin Abi Iwaqtas took the son of the slave girl of Zam'a and took him to the Prophet. Abd bin Zam'a too came along with him. Sa'd said, "This is the son of my brother, and the latter has informed me that he is his son." Abd bin Zam'a said, "O Allah's apostle, this is my brother who is the son of the slave girl of Zam'a and was born on his, i.e. Zam'a's, bed." Allah's apostle looked at the son of the slave girl of Zam'a and noticed that he, of all the people, had the greatest resemblance to Utbah bin Abi Iwaqtas. Allah's apostle then said to Abd, "He is yours, he is your brother, O Abd bin Zam'a, he was born on the bed of your father." At the same time, Allah's apostle said to his wife Sauda, "Veil yourself before him, i.e. the son of the slave girl, O Sauda," because of the resemblance he noticed between him and Utbah bin Abi Iwaqtas. Allah's apostle added, "The boy is for the bed, i.e. for the owner of the bed where he was born, and stone is for the adulterer." Ibn Shihab said, Abu Huraira used to say that, i.e. the last statement of the Prophet in the above hadith 596, publicly. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 597. Narrated by Urwa bin Zubair, a lady committed theft during the lifetime of Allah's apostle in the Ghazwa of Al-Fath, i.e. conquest of Mecca. Her folk went to Usama bin Zayd to intercede for her with the Prophet. When Usama interceded for her with Allah's apostle, the color of the face of Allah's apostle changed and he said, "Do you intercede with me in a matter involving one of the legal punishments prescribed by Allah?" Usama said, "O Allah's apostle, ask Allah's forgiveness for me." So in the afternoon, Allah's apostle got up and addressed the people. He praised Allah as he deserved and then said, "Amma bi'adu. The nations prior to you were destroyed because if a noble amongst them stole, they used to excuse him, and if a poor person amongst them stole, they would apply Allah's legal punishment to him. By him in whose hand Muhammad's soul is, if Fatima, the daughter of Muhammad, stole, I would cut her hand." Then Allah's apostle gave his order in the case of that woman and her hand was cut off. Afterwards her repentance proved sincere and she got married. Aisha said, "That lady used to visit me and I used to convey her demands to Allah's apostle." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 598. Narrated by Majashi, I took my brother to the Prophet after the conquest of Mecca, and said, "O Allah's apostle, I have come to you with my brother so that you may take a pledge of allegiance from him for migration." The Prophet said, "The people of migration, i.e. those who migrated to Medina before the conquest, enjoyed the privileges of migration, i.e. there is no need for migration anymore." I said to the Prophet, For what will you take his pledge of allegiance? The Prophet said, I will take his pledge of allegiance for Islam, belief, and for jihad, i.e. fighting in Allah's cause. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 599. Narrated by Mujashi bin Masud, I took Abu Mabud to the Prophet in order that he might give him the pledge of allegiance for migration. The Prophet said, Migration has gone to its people, but I take the pledge from him, i.e. Abu Mabud, for Islam and Jihad. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 600. Narrated by Mujahid, I said to Ibn Umar, I want to migrate to Sham. He said, there is no migration, but jihad, for Allah's cause. Go and offer yourself for jihad, and if you find an opportunity for jihad, stay there, otherwise, come back. In another narration, Ibn Umar said, there is no migration today or after Allah's apostle. And completed his statement as above. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 601. Narrated by Mujahid bin Jabr, Abdullah bin Umar used to say, there is no migration after the conquest of Mecca. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 602. Narrated by Atta bin Abi Iraba, Ubayd bin Umar and I visited Aisha, and he asked her about the migration. She said, there is no migration today. A believer used to flee with his religion to Allah and his Prophet for fear that he might be put to trial as regards his religion. Today Allah has rendered Islam victorious, therefore a believing one can worship one's Lord wherever one wishes. But there is jihad, for Allah's cause, and intentions. See Hadith 42, in the 4th volume for its explanation. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 603. Narrated by Mujahid, Allah's apostle got up on the day of the conquest of Mecca and said, Allah has made Mecca a sanctuary since the day He created the heavens and the earth, and it will remain a sanctuary by virtue of the sanctity Allah has bestowed on it till the day of resurrection. It, i.e. fighting in it, was not made lawful to anyone before me, nor will it be made lawful to anyone after me, and it was not made lawful for me except for a short period of time. Its game should not be chased, nor should its trees be cut, nor its vegetation or grass uprooted, not its lukata, i.e. most things, picked up except by one who makes a public announcement about it. Al-Abbas bin Abdul Muttalib said, except the ангիր, O Allah's apostle, as it is indispensable for blacksmiths and houses. On that, the Prophet kept quiet and then said, except the ангիր as it is lawful to cut. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 604. Narrated by Ismail, I saw a healed scar of blow over the hand of Ibn Abi Awfa who said, I received that blow in the battle of Hunayn in the company of the Prophet. I said, did you take part in the battle of Hunayn? He replied, yes, and in other battles, before it. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 605. Narrated by Abu Ishaq, I heard Al-Bara narrating when a man came and said to him, O Abu Umara, did you flee on the day of the battle of Hunayn? Al-Bara replied, I testify that the Prophet did not flee, but the hasty people hurried away and the people of Hawazin threw arrows at them. At that time, Abu Sufyan bin al-Harith was holding the white mule of the Prophet by the head, and the Prophet was saying, I am the Prophet undoubtedly, I am the son of Abdul Muttalib. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 606. Narrated by Abu Ishaq, Al-Bara was asked while I was listening, did you flee, before the enemy, along with the Prophet on the day of, the battle of, Hunayn? He replied, as for the Prophet, he did not flee. The enemy were good archers and the Prophet was saying, I am the Prophet undoubtedly, I am the son of Abdul Muttalib. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 607. Narrated by Abu Ishaq, that he heard Al-Bara narrating when a man from Qais tribe asked him, "Did you flee leaving Allah's apostle on the day of the battle of Hunayn?" Al-Bara replied, "But Allah's apostle did not flee. The people of Hawazin were good archers, and when we attacked them, they fled. But rushing towards the booty, we were confronted by the arrows of the enemy. I saw the Prophet riding his white mule while Abu Sufyan was holding its reins, and the Prophet was saying, 'I am the Prophet undoubtedly.' Israel and Zuhair said, 'The Prophet dismounted from his mule.'" Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 608. Narrated by Marwan and Al-Miswar bin Makrama, when the delegate of Hawazin came to Allah's apostle declaring their conversion to Islam and asked him to return their properties and captives, Allah's apostle got up and said to them, "There is involved in this matter, the people whom you see with me, and the most beloved talk to me, is the true one. So choose one of two alternatives, either the captives or the properties. I have been waiting for you, i.e. have not distributed the booty. Allah's apostle had delayed the distribution of their booty over 10 nights after his return from Taif. So when they came to know that Allah's apostle was not going to return to them but one of the two, they said, "We prefer to have our captives." So Allah's apostle got up amongst the Muslims, and praising Allah as he deserved, said, "To proceed. Your brothers have come to you with repentance and I see it logical to return their captives. So, whoever of you likes to do that as a favor, then he can do it. And whoever of you likes to stick to his share till we give him from the very first booty which Allah will give us, then he can do so." The people said, "We do that, i.e. return the captives, willingly as a favor, O Allah's apostle." Allah's apostle said, "We do not know which of you have agreed to it and which have not, so go back and let your chiefs forward us your decision." They went back and their chiefs spoke to them, and they, i.e. the chiefs, returned to Allah's apostle and informed him that all of them had agreed to give up their captives, with pleasure, and had given their permission, i.e. that the captives be returned to their people. The sub-narrator said, "That is what has reached me about the captives of Hawazin tribe." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 609. Narrated by Ibn Umar, when we returned from the Battle of Hunayn, Umar asked the Prophet about a vow which he had made during the pre-Islamic period of ignorance that he would perform itikaf. The Prophet ordered him to fulfill his vow. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 610. Narrated by Abu Qatada, we set out along with the Prophet during the year of the Battle of Hunayn, and when we faced the enemy, the Muslims, with the exception of the Prophet and some of his companions, retreated before the enemy. I saw one of the pagans overpowering one of the Muslims, so I struck the pagan from behind his neck, causing his armor to be cut off. The pagan headed towards me and pressed me so forcibly that I felt as if I was dying. Then death took him over and he released me. Afterwards I followed Umar and said to him, "What is wrong with the people?" He said, "It is the order of Allah." Then the Muslims returned to the battle after the flight, and, after overcoming the enemy, the Prophet sat and said, "Whoever had killed an infidel and has an evidence to this issue, will have the salb, i.e. the belonging of the deceased, e.g. clothes, arms, horse, etc. I stood up, and said, "Who will be my witness?" and then sat down. Then the Prophet repeated his question. Then the Prophet said the same, for the third time. I got up and said, "Who will be my witness?" and then sat down. The Prophet asked his former question again. So I got up. The Prophet said, "What is the matter, O Abu Qatada?" So I narrated the whole story. A man said, "Abu Qatada has spoken the truth, and the salb of the deceased is with me, so please compensate Abu Qatada on my behalf." Abu Bakr said, "No. By Allah, it will never happen that the Prophet will leave a lion of Allah who fights for the sake of Allah and his apostle and give his spoils to you." The Prophet said, "Abu Bakr has spoken the truth. Give it, the spoils, back to him, O man. So he gave it to me and I bought a garden in the land of Banu Salama with it, i.e. the spoils, and that was the first property I got after embracing Islam. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 611. Narrated by Abu Qatada, when it was the day of the Battle of Hunayn, I saw a Muslim man fighting with one of the pagans and another pagan was hiding himself behind the Muslim in order to kill him. So I hurried towards the pagan who was hiding behind the Muslim to kill him, and he raised his hand to hit me but I hit his hand and cut it off. That man got hold of me and pressed me so hard that I was afraid that I would die, then he knelt down and his grip became loose and I pushed him and killed him. The Muslims, excepting the Prophet and some of his companions, started fleeing and I too, fled with them. Suddenly I met Umar bin al-Khattab amongst the people and I asked him, "What is wrong with the people?" He said, "It is the order of Allah." Then the people returned to Allah's apostle, after defeating the enemy. Allah's apostle said, "Whoever produces a proof that he has killed an infidel, will have the spoils of the killed man." So I got up to look for an evidence to prove that I had killed an infidel, but I could not find anyone to bear witness for me, so I sat down. Then it came to my mind, that I should speak of it, and I mentioned the case to Allah's apostle. A man from the persons who were sitting with him, i.e. the Prophet, said, "The arms of the deceased one whom he, i.e. Abu Qatada, has mentioned, are with me, so please compensate him for it, i.e. the spoils." Abu Bakr said, "No, Allah's apostle will not give it, i.e. the spoils, to a weak humble person from Quraysh and leave one of Allah's lions who fights on behalf of Allah and his apostle." Allah's apostle then got up and gave that spoils to me, and I bought with it a garden which was the first property I got after embracing Islam. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 612. Narrated by Abu Musa, when the Prophet had finished from the battle of Hunayn, he sent Abu Amir at the head of an army to Autas. He, i.e. Abu Amir, met Durayd bin as-Sama and Durayd was killed and Allah defeated his companions. The Prophet sent me with Abu Amir. Abu Amir was shot at his knee with an arrow which a man from Jushm had shot and fixed into his knee. I went to him and said, "O uncle, who shot you?" He pointed me out, his killer, saying, "That is my killer who shot me, with an arrow." So I headed towards him and overtook him, and when he saw me, he fled, and I followed him and started saying to him, "Won't you be ashamed? Won't you stop?" So that person stopped, and we exchanged 2 hits with the swords and I killed him. Then I said to Abu Amir, "Allah has killed your killer." He said, "Take out this arrow." So I removed it, and water oozed out of the wound. He then said, "O son of my brother, convey my compliments to the Prophet and request him to ask Allah's forgiveness for me." Abu Amir made me his successor in commanding the people, i.e. troops. He survived for a short while and then died. Later, I returned and entered upon the Prophet at his house, and found him lying in a bed made of stalks of date palm leaves knitted with ropes, and on it there was bedding. The strings of the bed had their traces over his back and sides. Then I told the Prophet about our and Abu Amir's news and how he had said, "Tell him to ask for Allah's forgiveness for me." The Prophet asked for water, performed ablution, and then raised hands, saying, "O Allah's forgive you, bade Abu Amir." At that time I saw the whiteness of the Prophet's armpits. The Prophet then said, "O Allah, make him, i.e. Abu Amir, on the day of resurrection, superior to many of your human creatures." I said, "Will you ask Allah's forgiveness for me?" On that, the Prophet said, "O Allah, forgive the sins of Abdullah bin Qais and admit him to a nice entrance, i.e. paradise, on the day of resurrection." Abu Burda said, "One of the prayers was for Abu Amir and the other was for Abu Musa, i.e. Abdullah bin Qais. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 613. Narrated by Salama, The Prophet came to me while there was an effeminate man sitting with me, and I heard him, i.e. the effeminate man, saying to Abdullah bin Abi Umayyah, O Abdullah, see if Allah should make you conquer Taif tomorrow, then take the daughter of Ghailan, in marriage, as, she is so beautiful and fat that, she shows 4 folds of flesh when facing you, and 8 when she turns her back. The Prophet then said, these, effeminate men, should never enter upon you, O women. Ibn Jurayy said, that effeminate man was called Hit. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 614. Narrated by Hisham, the above narration and added extra, that at that time, the Prophet, was besieging Taif. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 615. Narrated by Abdullah bin Amr, when Allah's apostle besieged Taif and could not conquer its people, he said, we will return to Medina, if Allah wills. That distressed the companions of the Prophet, and they said, shall we go away without conquering it, i.e. the fort of Taif? Once the Prophet said, let us return. Then the Prophet said to them, fight tomorrow. They fought, and many of them got wounded, whereupon the Prophet said, we will return to Medina tomorrow if Allah wills. That delighted them, whereupon the Prophet smiled. The sub-narrator, Sufyan, said once, the Prophet smiled. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 616. Narrated by Abu Uthman, I heard from Sa'd, the first man who has thrown an arrow in Allah's cause, and from Abu Bakr, who jumped over the wall of the Taif fort along with a few persons and came to the Prophet. They both said, we heard the Prophet saying, if somebody claims to be the son of somebody other than his father knowingly, he will be denied paradise, i.e. he will not enter paradise. Narrated Ma'mar from Asim from Abu al-Aliya or Abu Uthman an-Nadi, who said, I heard Sa'd and Abu Bakr narrating from the Prophet. Asim said, I said to him, very trustworthy persons have narrated to you. He said, yes, one of them was the first to throw an arrow in Allah's cause, and the other came to the Prophet in a group of 33 persons from Taif. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 617. Narrated by Abu Burda, Abu Musa said, I was with the Prophet when he was encamping at Al-Jirana, a place between Mecca and Medina, and Bilal was with him. A Bedouin came to the Prophet and said, won't you fulfill what you have promised me? The Prophet said, rejoice at what I will do for you. The Bedouin said, you have said to me, rejoice too often. Then the Prophet turned to me, i.e. Abu Musa, and Bilal in an angry mood, and said, the Bedouin has refused the good tidings, so you both accept them. Bilal and I said, we accept them. Then the Prophet asked for a drinking bowl containing water and washed his hands and face in it, and then took a mouthful of water and threw it therein, saying, to us, drink some of it and pour some over your faces and chests, and be happy at the good tidings. So they both took the drinking bowl and did as instructed. Salama called from behind a screen, keep something of the water for your mother. So they left some of it for her. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 618. Narrated by Safwan bin Ya'la bin Umayyah, Ya'la used to say, I wish I could see Allah's apostle at the time when he is being inspired divinely. Ya'la added, while the Prophet was at Al-Jayrana, shaded with a cloth sheet, in the form of a tent, and there were staying with him some of his companions under it, suddenly there came to him a Bedouin wearing a cloak and perfumed extravagantly. He said, O Allah's apostle, what is your opinion regarding a man who assumes the state of Ihram for Umrah wearing a cloak after applying perfume to his body? Umar signaled with his hand to Ya'la to come near. Ya'la came and put his head underneath that cloth sheet, and saw the Prophet red-faced, and when that state of the Prophet was over, he said, where is he who has already asked me about the Umrah? The man was looked for and brought to the Prophet. The Prophet said to him, "As for the perfume you have applied to your body, wash it off your body thrice, and take off your cloak, and then do in your umrah the rites you do in your hajj." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 619. Narrated by Abdullah bin Zayd bin Asim, when Allah gave to his apostle the war booty on the day of Hunayn, he distributed that booty amongst those whose hearts have been, recently, reconciled to Islam, but did not give anything to the ангիր. So they seemed to have felt angry and sad as they did not get the same as other people had got. The Prophet then delivered a sermon before them, saying, "O, the assembly of ангիր! Didn't I find you astray, and then Allah guided you on the right path through me? You were divided into groups, and Allah brought you together through me. You were poor and Allah made you rich through me." Whatever the Prophet said, they, i.e. the ангիր, said, "Allah and his apostle have more favors to do." The Prophet said, "What stops you from answering the apostle of Allah?" But whatever he said to them, they replied, "Allah and his apostle have more favors to do." The Prophet then said, "If you wish you could say, you came to us in such and such state, at Medina. Wouldn't you be willing to see the people go away with sheep and camels while you go with the Prophet to your homes? But for the migration, I would have been one of the ангիր, and if the people took their way through a valley or mountain pass, I would select the valley or mountain pass of the ангիր. The ангիր are sheer, i.e. those clothes which are in direct contact with the body and worn inside the other garments, and the people are dithar, i.e. those clothes which are not in direct contact with the body and are worn over other garments. No doubt, you will see other people favored over you, so you should be patient till you meet me at the tank of Kothar. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 620. Narrated by Anas bin Malik, when Allah gave Allah's apostle what he gave of the properties of the Hawazin tribe as a war booty, the Prophet started giving some men 100 camels each. The ангիր, then, said, "May Allah forgive Allah's apostles as he gives to Quraysh and leaves us although our swords are still dribbling with the blood of Quraysh." Allah's apostle was informed of their statement, so he sent for the ангիր and gathered them in a leather tent, and did not call anybody else along with them. When they all gathered, the Prophet got up and said, "What is this talk being informed to me about you?" The learned men amongst the ангիր said, "O Allah's apostle! Our chiefs did not say anything, but some people amongst us who are younger in age said, 'May Allah forgive Allah's apostle as he gives, of the booty, to Quraysh and leaves us though our swords are still dribbling with their blood.' The Prophet said, 'I give to these men who have newly deserted heathenism, and embraced Islam, so as to attract their hearts. Won't you be happy that the people take the wealth while you take the Prophet with you to your homes? By Allah, what you are taking is better than whatever they are taking.' They, i.e. the ангիր, said, 'O Allah's apostle! We are satisfied.' The Prophet then said to them, 'You will find others favored over you greatly, so be patient till you meet Allah and his apostle and I will be at the tank then.' Anas added, 'But they did not remain patient.' Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 621. Narrated by Anas, when it was the day of the conquest of Mecca, Allah's apostle distributed the war booty amongst the people of Quraysh, which caused the ангիր to become angry. So the Prophet said, 'Won't you be pleased that the people take the worldly things and you take Allah's apostle with you?' They said, 'Yes.' The Prophet said, 'If the people took their way through a valley or mountain pass, I would take my way through the ангir's valley or mountain pass.' Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 622. Narrated by Anas, when it was the day of the battle of Hunayn, the Prophet confronted the tribe of Hawazin while there were 10,000 men, besides the Tulaika, i.e. those who had embraced Islam on the day of the conquest of Mecca, with the Prophet. When they, i.e. Muslims, fled, the Prophet said, 'O the group of Ansari,' they replied, 'Labbaik, O Allah's apostle and Sadiq. We are under your command. Then the Prophet got down, from his mule, and said, I am Allah's slave and his apostle. Then the pagans were defeated. The Prophet distributed the war booty amongst the Tulaika and Muhajirin, i.e. emigrants, and did not give anything to the Ansar. So the Ansar spoke, i.e. were dissatisfied, and he called them and made them enter a leather tent and said, Won't you be pleased that the people take the sheep and camels, and you take Allah's apostle along with you? The Prophet added, If the people took their way through a valley and the Ansar took their way through a mountain pass, then I would choose a mountain pass of the Ansar. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 623. Narrated by Anas, the Prophet gathered some people of Ansar and said, The people of Quraysh are still close to their pre-Islamic period of ignorance and have suffered a lot, and I want to help them and attract their hearts, by giving them the war booty. Won't you be pleased that the people take the worldly things, and you take Allah's apostle with you to your homes? They said, Yes, i.e. we are pleased with this distribution. The Prophet said, If the people took their way through a valley and the Ansar took their way through a mountain pass, then I would take the Ansar's valley or the Ansar's mountain pass. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 624. Narrated by Abdullah, when the Prophet distributed the war booty of Hunan, a man from the Ansar said, He, i.e. the Prophet, did not intend to please Allah in this distribution. So I came to the Prophet and informed him of that statement, whereupon the color of his face changed and he said, May Allah bestow his mercy on Moses, for he was troubled with more than this, but he remained patient. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 625. Narrated by Abdullah, when it was the day of Hunan, Prophet favored some people over some others, in the distribution of the booty. He gave Al-Akra 100 camels and gave Uyayna the same, and also gave other people, of Quraysh. A man said, Allah's pleasure was not the aim, in this distribution. I said, I will inform the Prophet, about your statement. The Prophet said, May Allah bestow mercy on Moses, for he was troubled more this but he remained patient. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 626. Narrated by Anas bin Malik, when it was the day, of the battle, of Hunan, the tributes of Hawazin and Ghatafan and others, along with their animals and offspring, and wives, came to fight against the Prophet. The Prophet had with him 10,000 men and some of the Tulaika. The companions fled, leaving the Prophet alone. The Prophet then made two calls which were clearly distinguished from each other. He turned right and said, O the group of Ansar. They said, Labbaik, O Allah's apostle. Rejoice, for we are with you. Then he turned left and said, O the group of Ansar. They said, Labbaik, O Allah's apostle. Rejoice, for we are with you. The Prophet at that time, was riding on a white mule, then he dismounted and said, I am Allah's slave and his apostle. The infidels then were defeated, and on that day the Prophet gained a large amount of booty which he distributed amongst the Muhajirin and the Tulaika and did not give anything to the Ansar. The Ansar said, When there is a difficulty, we are called, but the booty is given to other than us. The news reached the Prophet and he gathered them in a leather tent and said, What is this news reaching me from you, O the group of Ansar? They kept silent. He added, O the group of Ansar. Won't you be happy that the people take the worldly things and you take Allah's apostle to your homes reserving him for yourself? They said, Yes. Then the Prophet said, If the people took their way through a valley, and the Ansar took their way through a mountain pass, surely, I would take the Ansar's mountain pass. Hisham said, O Abu Hamza, i.e. Anas. Did you witness that? He replied, And how could I be absent from him? Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 627. Narrated by Ibn Umar, the Prophet sent a Sariyah towards Najd and I was in it, and our share from the booty amounted to 12 camels each, and we were given an additional camel each. So we returned with 13 camels each. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 628. Narrated by Salim's father, the Prophet sent Khalid bin al-Walid to the tribe of Jadhima, and Khalid invited them to Islam, but they could not express themselves by saying, Aslamna, i.e. we have embraced Islam, but they started saying Saba'na. Saba'na, i.e. we have come out of one religion to another. Khalid kept on killing some of them and taking some of them as captives, and gave every one of us his captive. When there came the day, then Khalid ordered that each man, i.e. Muslim soldier, should kill his captive. I said, by Allah, I will not kill my captive, and none of my companions will kill his captive. When we reached the Prophet, we mentioned to him the whole story. On that, the Prophet raised both his hands and said twice, O Allah, I am free from what Khalid has done. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 629. Narrated by Ali, the Prophet sent a Sariya under the command of a man from the Ангիր and ordered the soldiers to obey him. He, i.e. the commander, became angry and said, didn't the Prophet order you to obey me? They replied, yes. He said, collect firewood for me. So they collected it. He said, make a fire. When they made it, he said, enter it, i.e. the fire. So they intended to do that and started holding each other and saying, we run towards, i.e. take refuge with, the Prophet from the fire. They kept on saying that till the fire was extinguished and the anger of the commander abated. When that news reached the Prophet, he said, if they had entered it, i.e. the fire, they would not have come out of it till the day of resurrection. Obedience, to somebody, is required when he enjoins what is good. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 630. Narrated by Abu Burda, Allah's Apostle sent Abu Musa and Mu'ad bin Jabal to Yemen. He sent each of them to administer a province, as Yemen consisted of 2 provinces. The Prophet said to them, facilitate things for the people and do not make things difficult for them, be kind and lenient, both of you, with the people, and do not be hard on them, and give the people good tidings and do not repulse them. So each of them went to carry on his job. So when any one of them toured his province and happened to come near the border of the province of his companion, he would visit him and greet him. Once Mu'adh toured that part of his state which was near the border of the province of his companion Abu Musa. Mu'adh came riding his mule till he reached Abu Musa and saw him sitting, and the people had gathered around him. Behold, there was a man tied with his hands behind his neck. Mu'adh said to Abu Musa, O Abdullah bin Qais, what is this? Abu Musa replied, this man has reverted to heathenism after embracing Islam. Mu'adh said, I will not dismount till he is killed. Abu Musa replied, he has been brought for this purpose, so come down. Mu'adh said, I will not dismount till he is killed. So Abu Musa ordered that he be killed, and he was killed. Then Mu'adh dismounted and said, O Abdullah bin Qais, how do you recite the Quran? Abu Musa said, I recite the Quran regularly at intervals and piecemeal. How do you recite it, O Mu'adh? Mu'adh said, I sleep in the first part of the night and then get up after having slept for the time devoted for my sleep and then recite as much as Allah has written for me. So I seek Allah's reward for both my sleep as well as my prayer, at night. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 631. Narrated by Abi Burda, that Abu Musa al-Ash'ari said that the Prophet had sent him to Yemen and he asked the Prophet about certain alcoholic drink which used to be prepared there. The Prophet said, what are they? Abu Musa said, al-bit and al-mizr. He said, al-bit is an alcoholic drink made from honey, and al-mizr is an alcoholic drink made from barley. The Prophet said, all intoxicants are prohibited. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 632. Narrated by Abu Burda, that the Prophet sent his, i.e. Abu Burda's, grandfather, Abu Musa and Muadh to Yemen and said to both of them, facilitate things for the people, be kind and lenient, and do not make things difficult, for people, and give them good tidings, and do not repulse them, and both of you should obey each other. Abu Musa said, O Allah's Prophet, in our land there is an alcoholic drink, prepared, from barley called al-mizr, and another, prepared, from honey, called al-bid. The Prophet said, all intoxicants are prohibited. Then both of them proceeded, and Muadh asked Abu Musa, how do you recite the Quran? Abu Musa replied, I recite it while I am standing, sitting or riding my riding animals, at intervals and piecemeal. Muadh said, but I sleep and then get up. I sleep and hope for Allah's reward for my sleep as I seek His reward for my night prayer. Then he, i.e. Muadh, pitched a tent and they started visiting each other. Once Muadh paid a visit to Abu Musa and saw a chained man. Muadh asked, what is this? Abu Musa said, he was a Jew who embraced Islam and has now turned apostate. Muadh said, I will surely chop off his neck. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 633. Narrated by Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, Allah's Apostle sent me, as a governor, to the land of my people, and I came while Allah's Apostle was encamping at a place called Al-Abda. The Prophet said, have you made the intention to perform the Hajj, O Abdullah bin Qais? I replied, yes, O Allah's Apostle. He said, what did you say? I replied, I said, Labbaik, and expressed the same intention as yours. He said, have you driven the Hadi along with you? I replied, no, I did not drive the Hadi. He said, so perform the Tawaf of the Kaaba and then the Sa'i between Safa and Marwa and then finish the state of Ihram. So I did the same, and one of the women of the tribe of Banu Qais combed my hair. We continued follow in that tradition till the Caliphate of Umar. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 634. Narrated by Ibn Abbas, Allah's Apostle said to Mu'adh bin Jabal when he sent him to Yemen, you will come to the people of Scripture, and when you reach them, invite them to testify that none has the right to be worshipped except Allah and that Muhammad is his apostle. And if they obey you in that, then tell them that Allah has enjoined on them 5 prayers to be performed every day and night. And if they obey you in that, then tell them that Allah has enjoined on them sadaqah, i.e. rakat, to be taken from the rich amongst them and given to the poor amongst them. And if they obey you in that, then be cautious. Don't take their best properties, as zakat, and be afraid of the curse of an oppressed person, as there is no screen between his invocation and Allah. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 635. Narrated by Amr bin Ma'imun, when Muadh arrived at Yemen, he led them, i.e. the people of Yemen, in the Fajr prayer wherein he recited, Allah took Abraham as a Khalil. A man amongst the people said, how glad the mother of Abraham is. In another narration, Amr said, the Prophet sent Muadh to Yemen and he led the people in the Fajr prayer and recited, Allah took Abraham as a Khalil. A man behind him said, how glad the mother of Abraham is. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 636. Narrated by Al-Bara, Allah's Apostle sent us to Yemen along with Khalid bin al-Walid. Later on he sent Ali bin Abi Talib in his place. The Prophet said to Ali, give Khalid's companions the choice of either staying with you, in Yemen, or returning to Medina. I was one of those who stayed with him, i.e. Ali, and got several awake of gold from the war booty. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 637. Narrated by Buraida, the Prophet sent Ali to Khalid to bring the kumis of the booty, and I hated Ali, and Ali had taken a bath, after a sexual act with a slave girl from the Kumis. I said to Khalid, "Don't you see this, i.e. Ali?" When we reached the Prophet I mentioned that to him. He said, "O Buraida, do you hate Ali?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Do you hate him, for he deserves more than that from the cumless." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 638. Narrated by Abu Said al-Khudri, Ali bin Abi Talib sent a piece of gold not yet taken out of its ore, in a tanned leather container to Allah's apostle. Allah's apostle distributed that amongst 4 persons, Uyayna bin Badr, Akra bin Habis, Zayd al-Khail, and the 4th was either Alqama or Amir bin at-Tufail. On that, one of his companions said, "We are more deserving of this gold than these persons." When that news reached the Prophet, he said, "Don't you trust me, though I am the truth-worthy man of the One in the heavens, and I receive the news of heaven, i.e. divine inspiration, both in the morning and in the evening." There got up a man with sunken eyes, raised cheekbones, raised forehead, a thick beard, a shaven head and a waist sheet that was tucked up, and he said, "O Allah's apostle, be afraid of Allah." The Prophet said, "Woe to you! Am I not of all the people of the earth the most entitled to fear Allah?" Then that man went away. Khalid bin al-Walid said, "O Allah's apostle, shall I chop his neck off?" The Prophet said, "No, for he may offer prayers." Khalid said, "Numerous are those who offer prayers and say by their tongues, i.e. mouths, what is not in their hearts." Allah's apostle said, "I have not been ordered, by Allah, to search the hearts of the people or cut open their bellies." Then the Prophet looked at him, i.e. that man, while the latter was going away, and said, "From the offspring of this man there will come out people, who will recite the Quran continuously and elegantly, but it will not exceed their throats. They will neither understand it nor act upon it. They would go out of the religion, i.e. Islam, as an arrow goes through a game's body." I think he also said, "If I should be present at their time I would kill them as the nations at Hamid were killed." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 639. Narrated by Atta, Jabir said, "The Prophet ordered Ali to keep the state of Iram." Jabir added, "Ali bin Abi Talib returned from Yemen, when he was a governor of Yemen. The Prophet said to him, 'With what intention have you assumed the state of Iram?' Ali said, 'I have assumed Iram with an intention as that of the Prophet.' Then the Prophet said to him, 'Offer a hadi and keep the state of Iram in which you are now.' Ali slaughtered a hadi on his behalf." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 640. Narrated by Ibn Umar, "The Prophet assumed the state of Iram for Umrah and Hajj, and we too assumed it for Hajj with him. When we arrived at Mecca, the Prophet said, 'Whoever does not possess a hadi should regard his Iram for Umrah only.' The Prophet had a hadi with him. Ali bin Abi Talib came to us from Yemen with the intention of performing Hajj. The Prophet said to him, 'With what intention have you assumed the Iram, for your wife is with us?' Ali said, 'I assumed the Layram with the same intention as that of the Prophet.' The Prophet said, 'Keep on the state of Layram, as we have got the hadi.' Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 641. Narrated by Jarir, "In the pre-Islamic period of ignorance there was a house called Dhul Khalasa or Al-Kabi'a al-Yamaniyya or Al-Kabi'a ash-Shamiyya. The Prophet said to me, 'Won't you relieve me from Dhul Khalasa?' So I set out with 150 riders, and we dismantled it and killed whoever was present there. Then I came to the Prophet and informed him, and he invoked good upon us and Alama's tribe." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 642. Narrated by Qais, Jarir said to me, "The Prophet said to me, 'Won't you relieve me from Dhul Khalasa?' And that was a house in Yemen belonging to the tribe of Qadam called Al-Kaba al-Yamaniyya. I proceeded with 150 cavalry from Ammah's tribe, who were horse riders. I used not to sit firm on horses, so the Prophet stroked me over my chest till I saw the mark of his fingers over my chest, and then he said, O Allah! Make him, i.e. Jarir, firm and one who guides others and is guided on the right path. So Jarir proceeded to it, dismantled and burned it, and then sent a messenger to Allah's apostle. The messenger of Jarir said, to the Prophet, by him who sent you with the truth, I did not leave that place till it was like a scabby camel. The Prophet blessed the horses of Ammah and their men 5 times. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 643. Narrated by Qais, Jarir said, Allah's apostle said to me, won't you relieve me from Dhul Khalasa? I replied, yes, I will relieve you. So I proceeded along with 150 cavalry from Ammah's tribe who were skillful in riding horses. I used not to sit firm over horses, so I informed the Prophet of that, and he stroked my chest with his hand till I saw the marks of his hand over my chest, and he said, O Allah! Make him firm and one who guides others and is guided, on the right path. Since then I have never fallen from a horse. Dhul al-Khalasa was a house in Yemen belonging to the tribe of Qadam and Bajala, and in it there were idols which were worshipped, and it was called Al-Kabi'ah. Jarir went there, burned it with fire and dismantled it. When Jarir reached Yemen, there was a man who used to foretell and give good omens by casting arrows of divination. Someone said to him, the messenger of Allah's apostle is present here, and if he should get hold of you, he would chop off your neck. One day while he was using them, i.e. arrows of divination, Jarir stopped there and said to him, break them, i.e. the arrows, and testify that none has the right to be worshipped except Allah, or else I will chop off your neck. So the man broke those arrows and testified that none has the right to be worshipped except Allah. Then Jarir sent a man called Abu Artada from the tribe of Ammah to the Prophet to convey the good news, of destroying Dhul Khalasa. So when the messenger reached the Prophet, he said, O Allah's apostle! By him who sent you with the truth, I did not leave it till it was like a scabby camel. Then the Prophet blessed the horses of Ammah and their men 5 times. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 644. Narrated by Abu Uthman, Allah's apostle sent Amr bin al-As as the commander of the troops of Datus Salasil. Amr bin al-As said, on my return, I came to the Prophet and said, which people do you love most? He replied, Aisha. I said, from amongst the men. He replied, her father, Abu Bakr. I said, whom do you love next? He replied, Umar. Then he counted the names of many men, and I became silent for fear that he might regard me as the last of them. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 645. Narrated by Jarir, while I was at Yemen, I met 2 men from Yemen called Dhu Kala and Dhu Amr, and I started telling them about Allah's apostle. Dhu Amr said to me, if what you are saying about your friend, i.e. the Prophet, is true, then he has died 3 days ago. Then both of them accompanied me to Medina, and when we had covered some distance on the way to Medina, we saw some riders coming from Medina. We asked them and they said, Allah's apostle has died and Abu Bakr has been appointed as the caliph and the people are in a good state. Then they said, tell your friend, Abu Bakr, that we have come, to visit him, and if Allah will, we will come again. So they both returned to Yemen. When I told Abu Bakr their statement, he said to me, I wish you had brought them to me. Afterwards I met Dhu Amr, and he said to me, O Jarir, you have done a favor to me and I am going to tell you something, i.e. you, the nation of Arabs, will remain prosperous as long as you choose and appoint another chief whenever a former one is dead. But if authority is obtained by the power of the sword, then the rulers will become kings who will get angry, as kings get angry, and will be delighted as kings get delighted. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 646. Narrated by Wahab bin Kaysan, Jabir bin Abdullah said, Allah's apostle sent troops to the sea coast and appointed Abu Ubaidah bin al-Jarrah as their commander, and they were 300 men. We set out, and we had covered some distance on the way, when our journey food ran short. So Abu Ubaidah ordered that all the food present with the troops be collected, and it was collected. Our journey food was dates, and Abu Ubaidah kept on giving us our daily ration from it little by little, piecemeal, till it decreased to such an extent that we did not receive except a date each. I asked, Jabir, how could one date benefit you? He said, we came to know its value when even that finished. Jabir added, then we reached the sea coast, where we found a fish like a small mountain. The people, i.e. troops, ate of it for 18 nights, i.e. days. Then Abu Ubaidah ordered that 2 of its ribs be fixed on the ground, in the form of an arch, and that a she-camel be ridden and passed under them. So it passed under them without touching them. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 647. Narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah, Allah's apostle sent us who were 300 riders under the command of Abu Ubaidah bin al-Jarrah in order to watch the caravan of the Quraysh pagans. We stayed at the seashore for half a month and were struck with such severe hunger that we ate even the kabt, i.e. the leaves of the salam, a thorny desert tree, and because of that, the army was known as Jaysh al-Kabt. Then the sea threw out an animal, i.e. a fish, called al-Anbar, and we ate of that for half a month, and rubbed its fat on our bodies till our bodies returned to their original state, i.e. became strong and healthy. Abu Ubaidah took one of its ribs, fixed it on the ground, then he went to the tallest man of his companions, to let him pass under the rib. One Sufyan said, he took a rib from its parts and fixed it, and then took a man and camel and they passed from underneath it, without touching it. Jabir added, there was a man amongst the people who slaughtered 3 camels and then slaughtered another 3 camels and then slaughtered other 3 camels, and then Abu Ubaidah forbade him to do so. Narrated Abu Saleh, Qais bin Sa'd said to his father, I was present in the army and the people were struck with severe hunger. He said, you should have slaughtered camels for them. Qais said, I did slaughter camels but they were hungry again. He said, you should have slaughtered camels again. Qais said, I did slaughter camels again but the people felt hungry again. He said, you should have slaughtered camels again. Qais said, I did slaughter camels again, but the people again felt hungry. He said, you should have slaughtered camels again. Qais said, but I was forbidden by Abu Ubaidah this time. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 648. Narrated by Jabir, we set out in the army of Al-Kabt and Abu Ubaidah was the commander of the troops. We were struck with severe hunger and the sea threw out a dead fish the like of which we had never seen, and it was called Al-Anbar. We ate of it for half a month. Abu Ubaidah took, and fixed, one of its bones and a rider passed underneath it, without touching it. Jabir added. Abu Ubaidah said, to us, eat of that fish. When we arrived at Medina, we informed the Prophet about that, and he said, eat, for it is food Allah has brought out for you, and feed us if you have some of it. So some of them gave him, of that fish, and he ate it. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 649. Narrated by Abu Hurairah, that during the Hajj in which the Prophet had made Abu Bakr as Siddiq as chief of the Hajj before the Hajj al-Wida, on the day of Nahr, Abu Bakr sent him along with a group of persons to announce to the people, no pagan is permitted to perform Hajj after this year, and nobody is permitted to perform the Tawaf of the Kaaba naked. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 650. Narrated by Al-Bara, the last surah which was revealed in full was Bara, i.e. Surah At-Tawbah, and the last surah, i.e. part of a surah, which was revealed was the last verses of Surah An-Nisa, they ask you for a legal decision. Say, Allah directs, thus, about those who have no descendants or ascendants as heirs. 4.177 Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 651. Narrated by Imran bin Hussein, a delegation from Banu Tamim came to the Prophet. The Prophet said, "Accept the good tidings, O Banu Tamim." They said, "O Allah's Apostle, you have given us good tidings, so give us something." Signs of displeasure appeared on his face. Then another delegation from Yemen came and he said, to them, "Accept the good tidings, for Banu Tamim refuses to accept them." They replied, "We have accepted them, O Allah's Apostle." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 652. Narrated by Abu Huraira, I have not ceased to like Banu Tamim ever since I heard of three qualities attributed to them by Allah's Apostle. He said they, out of all my followers, will be the strongest opponent of Ad-Dajjal. Aisha had a slave girl from them, and the Prophet told her to manumit her as she was from the descendants of the Prophet, Ishmael, and, when their zakat was brought, the Prophet said, "This is the zakat of my people." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 653. Narrated by Ibn Abi Mulaika, Abdullah bin Zubair said that a group of riders belonging to Banu Tamim came to the Prophet. Abu Bakr said, to the Prophet, "Appoint Al-Qaqa bin Mabad bin Zurara as their ruler." Umar said, to the Prophet, "No. But appoint Al-Aqra bin Habis." Thereupon Abu Bakr said, to Umar, "You just wanted to oppose me." Umar replied, "I did not want to oppose you." So both of them argued so much that their voices became louder, and then the following divine verses were revealed in that connection: "O you who believe, do not be forward in the presence of Allah and His Apostle," till the end of verse 49.1. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 654. Narrated by Abu Jamra, I said to Ibn Abbas, "I have an earthenware pot containing nabid, i.e. water and dates or grapes, for me, and I drink of it while it is sweet. If I drink much of it and stay with the people for a long time, I get afraid that they may discover it, for I will appear as if I were drunk." Ibn Abbas said, a delegation of Abdul Qais came to Allah's Apostle and he said, "Welcome, O people. Neither will you have disgrace nor will you regret." They said, "O Allah's Apostle, there are the Madar pagans between you and us, so we cannot come to you except in the sacred months. So please teach us some orders on acting upon which we will enter paradise. Besides, we will preach that to our people who are behind us." The Prophet said, "I order you to do 4 things and forbid you from 4 things. I order you to believe in Allah." Do you know what is to believe in Allah? That is to testify that none has the right to be worshipped except Allah. I order you also to offer prayers perfectly, to pay zakat, and to fast the month of Ramadan, and to give the kumus, i.e. 1/5 of the booty, for Allah's sake. I forbid you from 4 other things, i.e. the wine that is prepared in ad-duba, and nacheinander, az-hantam, and al-musafat. See Hadith number 50 Volume 1. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 655. Narrated by Ibn Abbas, the delegation of Abdul Qais came to the Prophet and said, "O Allah's Apostle, we belong to the tribe of Rabi'a. The infidels of Madar tribe intervened between us and you so that we cannot come to you except in the sacred months, so please order us some things we may act on and invite those left behind to act on." The Prophet said, "I order you to observe 4 things and forbid you from 4 things. I order you, to believe in Allah, i.e. to testify that none has the right to be worshipped except Allah." The Prophet pointed with finger indicating one and added, "To offer prayers perfectly, to give zakat, and to give 1/5 of the booty you win, for Allah's sake." I forbid you to use ad-duba, and nacheinander, al-hantam, and al-musafat, utensils used for preparing alcoholic liquors and drinks. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 656. Narrated by Bukhair, that Quraib, the freed slave of Ibn Abbas, told him that Ibn Abbas, Abdurrahman bin Ezber and Al-Miswar bin Makrama sent him to Aisha saying, "Pay her our greetings and ask her about our offering of the 2 rakat after asr prayer, and tell her that we have been informed that you offer these 2 rakat while we have heard that the Prophet had forbidden their offering." Ibn Abbas said, "I and Umar used to beat the people for their offering them." Quraib added, "I entered upon her and delivered their message to her. She said, 'Ask Salama.' So, I informed them of Aisha's answer, and they sent me to Salama for the same purpose as they sent me to Aisha." Salama replied, "I heard the Prophet forbidding the offering of these 2 rakat. Once the Prophet offered the asr prayer, and then came to me. And at that time some Ansari women from the tribe of Banu Haram were with me. Then, the Prophet offered those 2 rakat, and I sent my lady servant to him, saying, 'Stand beside him and say to him, Salama says, O Allah's Apostle, didn't I hear you forbidding the offering of these 2 rakat, after the asr prayer, yet I see you offering them? And if he beckons to you with his hand, then wait behind.' So the lady slave did that, and the Prophet beckoned her with his hand, and she stayed behind, and when the Prophet finished his prayer, he said, 'O the daughter of Abu Umayyah, i.e. Salama, you were asking me about these 2 rakat after the asr prayer. In fact, some people from the tribe of Abdul Qais came to me to embrace Islam and busied me so much that I did not offer the 2 rakat which were offered after Zuhr compulsory prayer, and these 2 rakat, you have seen me offering, make up for those." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 657. Narrated by Ibn Abbas, the first Friday, i.e. Jumu'ah, prayer offered after the Friday prayer offered at the Mosque of Allah's Apostle was offered at the Mosque of Abdul Qais situated at Jawadi, that is a village at Al-Bahrain. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 658. Narrated by Abu Huraira, the Prophet sent some cavalry towards Najd, and they brought a man from the tribe of Banu Hanifa who was called Thumama bin Uthal. They fastened him to one of the pillars of the mosque. The Prophet went to him and said, "What have you got, O Thumama?" He replied, "I have got a good thought, O Muhammad. If you should kill me, you would kill a person who has already killed somebody, and if you should set me free, you would do a favor to one who is grateful, and if you want property, then ask me whatever wealth you want." He was left till the next day, when the Prophet said to him, "What have you got, Thumama?" He said, "What I told you, i.e. if you set me free, you would do a favor to one who is grateful." The Prophet left him till the day after, when he said, "What have you got, O Thumama?" He said, "I have got what I told you." On that the Prophet said, "Release Thumama." So he, i.e. Thumama, went to a garden of date palm trees near to the mosque, took a bath, and then entered the mosque and said, "I testify that none has the right to be worshipped except Allah, and also testify that Muhammad is his apostle. By Allah, O Muhammad, there was no face on the surface of the earth most disliked by me than yours, but now your face has become the most beloved face to me. By Allah, there was no religion most disliked by me than yours, but now it is the most beloved religion to me. By Allah, there was no town most disliked by me than your town, but now it is the most beloved town to me. Your cavalry arrested me, at the time, when I was intending to perform the Umrah. And now what do you think?" The Prophet gave him good tidings, congratulated him, and ordered him to perform the Umrah. So when he came to Mecca, someone said to him, "You have become a Sabian." Thumama replied, "No. By Allah, I have embraced Islam with Muhammad, apostle of Allah. No, by Allah, not a single grain of wheat will come to you from Jamaica unless the Prophet gives his permission." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 656. Narrated by Bukhair, that Quraib, the freed slave of Ibn Abbas, told him that Ibn Abbas, Abdurrahman bin Ezber and Al-Miswar bin Makrama sent him to Aisha saying, "Pay her our greetings and ask her about our offering of the 2 rakat after Asr prayer, and tell her that we have been informed that you offer these 2 rakat while we have heard that the Prophet had forbidden their offering." Ibn Abbas said, "I and Umar used to beat the people for their offering them." Quraib added, "I entered upon her and delivered their message to her. She said, 'Ask Salama.' So, I informed them of Aisha's answer, and they sent me to Salama for the same purpose as they sent me to Aisha." Salama replied, "I heard the Prophet forbidding the offering of these 2 rakat. Once the Prophet offered the Asr prayer, and then came to me. And at that time some Ansari women from the tribe of Banu Haram were with me. Then, the Prophet offered those 2 rakat, and I sent my lady servant to him, saying, 'Stand beside him and say to him, Salama says, O Allah's Apostle, didn't I hear you forbidding the offering of these 2 rakat, after the Asr prayer, yet I see you offering them? And if he beckons to you with his hand, then wait behind.' So the lady slave did that, and the Prophet beckoned her with his hand, and she stayed behind, and when the Prophet finished his prayer, he said, 'O the daughter of Abu Umayyah, i.e. Salama, you were asking me about these 2 rakat after the Asr prayer. In fact, some people from the tribe of Abdul Qais came to me to embrace Islam and busied me so much that I did not offer the 2 rakat which were offered after Zuhr compulsory prayer, and these 2 rakat, you have seen me offering, make up for those.'" Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 657. Narrated by Ibn Abbas, the first Friday, i.e. Jumu'ah, prayer offered after the Friday prayer offered at the Mosque of Allah's Apostle was offered at the Mosque of Abdul Qais situated at Jawadi, that is a village at Al-Bahrain. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 658. Narrated by Abu Huraira, the Prophet sent some cavalry towards Najd, and they brought a man from the tribe of Banu Hanifa who was called Thumama bin Uthal. They fastened him to one of the pillars of the mosque. The Prophet went to him and said, "What have you got, O Thumama?" He replied, "I have got a good thought, O Muhammad. If you should kill me, you would kill a person who has already killed somebody, and if you should set me free, you would do a favor to one who is grateful, and if you want property, then ask me whatever wealth you want." He was left till the next day, when the Prophet said to him, "What have you got, Thumama?" He said, "What I told you, i.e. if you set me free, you would do a favor to one who is grateful." The Prophet left him till the day after, when he said, "What have you got, O Thumama?" He said, "I have got what I told you." On that the Prophet said, "Release Thumama." So he, i.e. Thumama, went to a garden of date palm trees near to the mosque, took a bath, and then entered the mosque and said, "I testify that none has the right to be worshipped except Allah, and also testify that Muhammad is his apostle. By Allah, O Muhammad, there was no face on the surface of the earth most disliked by me than yours, but now your face has become the most beloved face to me. By Allah, there was no religion most disliked by me than yours, but now it is the most beloved religion to me. By Allah, there was no town most disliked by me than your town, but now it is the most beloved town to me. Your cavalry arrested me, at the time, when I was intending to perform the Umrah. And now what do you think?" The Prophet gave him good tidings, congratulated him, and ordered him to perform the Umrah. So when he came to Mecca, someone said to him, "You have become a Sabian." Thumama replied, "No. By Allah, I have embraced Islam with Muhammad, apostle of Allah. No, by Allah, not a single grain of wheat will come to you from Jamaica unless the Prophet gives his permission." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 659. Narrated by Ibn Abbas, Musaylima al-Kadhdhab came during the lifetime of the Prophet and started saying, "If Muhammad gives me the rule after him, I will follow him." And he came to Medina with a great number of the people of his tribe. Allah's apostle went to him in the company of Thabit bin Qais bin Shammas, and at that time, Allah's apostle had a stick of a date palm tree in his hand. When he, i.e. the Prophet, stopped near Musaylima while the latter was amidst his companions, he said to him, "If you ask me for this piece of stick, I will not give it to you, and Allah's order you cannot avoid, but you will be destroyed, and if you turn your back from this religion, then Allah will destroy you. And I think you are the same person who was shown to me in my dream, and this is Thabit bin Qais who will answer your questions on my behalf." Then the Prophet went away from him. I asked about the statement of Allah's apostle, "You seem to be the same person who was shown to me in my dream," and Abu Huraira informed me that Allah's apostle said, "When I was sleeping, I saw, in a dream, 2 bangles of gold on my hands, and that worried me. And then I was inspired divinely in the dream that I should blow on them, so I blew on them and both the bangles flew away. And I interpreted it that 2 liars, who would claim to be prophets, would appear after me. One of them has proved to be Al-Ansi and the other, Musaylima." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 660. Narrated by Abu Huraira, Allah's apostle said, "While I was sleeping, I was given the treasures of the earth and 2 gold bangles were put in my hands, and I did not like that, but I received the inspiration that I should blow on them, and I did so, and both of them vanished." I interpreted it as referring to the 2 liars between whom I am present, the ruler of Sana'a and the ruler of Yamaha. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 661. Narrated by Abu Raja al-Udaridi, "We used to worship stones, and when we found a better stone than the first one, we would throw the first one and take the latter, but if we could not get a stone then we would collect some earth, i.e. soil, and then bring a sheep and milk that sheep over it, and perform the tawaf around it. When the month of Rajab came, we used to stop the military actions, calling this month the iron remover, for we used to remove and throw away the iron parts of every spear and arrow in the month of Rajab." Abu Raja added, "When the Prophet sent with Allah's message, I was a boy working as a shepherd of my family camels. When we heard the news about the appearance of the Prophet, we ran to the fire, i.e. to Musaylima al-Kadhdhab." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 662. Narrated by Ubaydullah bin Abdullah bin Utbah, "We were informed that Musaylima al-Kadhdhab had arrived in Medina and stayed in the house of the daughter of Al-Harith. The daughter of Al-Harith bin Qur'ais was his wife, and she was the mother of Abdullah bin Amir. There came to him Allah's apostle accompanied by Thabit bin Qais bin Shammas, who was called the orator of Allah's apostle. Allah's apostle had a stick in his hand then. The Prophet stopped before Musaylima and spoke to him. Musaylima said to him, "If you wish, we would not interfere between you and the rule, on condition that the rule will be ours after you." The Prophet said, "If you ask me for this stick, I would not give it to you. I think you are the same person who was shown to me in a dream. And this is Thabit bin al-Qais who will answer you on my behalf." The Prophet then went away. I asked Ibn Abbas about the dream Allah's apostle had mentioned. Ibn Abbas said, "Someone told me that the Prophet said, 'When I was sleeping, I saw in a dream that 2 gold bangles were put in my hands, and that frightened me and made me dislike them. Then I was allowed to blow on them, and when I blew at them, both of them flew. Then I interpreted them as 2 liars who would appear. One of them was Al-Ansi, who was killed by Faraz in Yemen, and the other was Musaylima al-Kadhdhab." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 663. Narrated by Hudhaifa, Al-Akib and Sa'id, "The rulers of Najran came to Allah's apostle with the intention of doing li'an. One of them said to the other, 'Do not do this li'an, for, by Allah, if he is a prophet and we do this li'an, neither we, nor our offspring after us will be successful.' Then both of them said, to the Prophet, "We will give what you should ask, but you should send a trustworthy man with us, and do not send any person with us but an honest one." The Prophet said, "I will send an honest man who is really trustworthy." Then every one of the companions of Allah's apostle wished to be that one. Then the Prophet said, "Get up, O Abu Ubaidah bin al-Jarrah." When he got up, Allah's apostle said, "This is the trustworthy man of this Muslim nation." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 664. Narrated by Hudhaifa, the people of Najran came to the Prophet and said, "Send an honest man to us." The Prophet said, "I will send to you an honest man who is really trustworthy." Every one of the Muslim people hoped to be that one. The Prophet then sent Abu Ubaidah bin al-Jarrah. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 665. Narrated by Anas, the Prophet said, "Every nation has an Amin, i.e. the most honest man, and the Amin of this nation is Abu Ubaidah bin al-Jarrah." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 666. Narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah, Allah's apostle said to me, "If the revenue of Al-Bahrain should come, I will give you so much and so much," repeating so much thrice. But the revenue of Al-Bahrain did not come till Allah's apostle had died. When the revenue came during the rule of Abu Bakr ordered an announcer to announce, "Whoever had any debt or promise due upon the Prophet, should present himself to me, i.e. Abu Bakr." I came to Abu Bakr and informed him that the Prophet had said to me, "If the revenue of Al-Bahrain should come, I will give you so much and so much," repeating so much thrice. So Abu Bakr gave me. In another narration Jabir said, "I met Abu Bakr after that and asked him to give me what the Prophet had promised me, but he did not give me. I again went to him, but he did not give me. I again went to him, for the third time, but he did not give me. On that I said to him, 'I came to you but you did not give me, then I came to you and you did not give me, and then again I came to you, but you did not give me, so you should either give me or else you are like a miserly to me.' On that, Abu Bakr said, 'Do you say, you are like a miserly to me? There is no worse disease than miserliness.' Abu Bakr said it thrice and added, 'Whenever I refused to give you, I had the intention of giving you.' In another narration, Jabir bin Abdullah said, 'I went to Abu Bakr, and he gave me a handful of money, and told me to count it. I counted and found it 500, and then Abu Bakr said to me, 'Take the same amount twice.'" Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 667. Narrated by Abu Musa, "My brother and I came from Yemen to Medina, and remained for some time, thinking that Ibn Masud and his mother belonged to the family of the Prophet because of their frequent entrance upon the Prophet, and their being attached to him." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 668. Narrated by Zadam, "When Abu Musa arrived at Kufa as a governor, he honored this family of Jarm by paying them a visit. I was sitting near to him, and he was eating chicken as his lunch, and there was a man sitting amongst the people. Abu Musa invited the man to the lunch, but the latter said, 'I saw chickens eating something dirty, so I consider them unclean.' Abu Musa said, 'Come on. I saw the Prophet eating it, i.e. chicken.' The man said, 'I have taken an oath that I will not eat chicken.' Abu Musa said, 'Come on. I will tell you about your oath.' We, a group of Al-Ashariyan people, went to the Prophet and asked him to give us something to ride, but the Prophet refused. Then we asked him for the second time to give us something to ride, but the Prophet took an oath that he would not give us anything to ride. After a while, some camels of booty were brought to the Prophet and he ordered that 5 camels be given to us. When we took those camels we said, 'We have made the Prophet forget his oath, and we will not be successful after that.' So I went to the Prophet and said, 'O Allah Apostle, You took an oath that you would not give us anything to ride, but you have given us. He said, yes, for if I take an oath and later I see a better solution than that, I act on the later, and gave the expiation of that oath. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 669. Narrated by Imran bin Husayn, the people of Banu Tamim came to Allah's apostle, and he said, be glad, i.e. have good tidings. O Banu Tamim! They said, as you have given us good tidings then give us, some material things. On that the features of Allah's apostle changed, i.e. he took it ill. Then some people from Yemen came, and the Prophet said, to them, accept good tidings as Banu Tamim have not accepted them. They said, we accept them, O Allah's apostle. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 670. Narrated by Abu Maysud, the Prophet beckoned with his hand towards Yemen and said, belief is there. The harshness and mercilessness are the qualities of those farmers etc., who are busy with their camels and pay no attention to the religion, is towards the east, from where the side of the head of Satan will appear. Those are the tribes of Rabi'a and Madar. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 671. Narrated by Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, the people of Yemen have come to you and they are more gentle and soft-hearted. Belief is Yemenite and wisdom is Yemenite, while pride and haughtiness are the qualities of the owners of camels, i.e. Bedouins. Calmness and solemnity are the characters of the owners of sheep. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 672. Narrated by Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, belief is Yemenite while afflictions appear from there, the east, from where the side of the head of Satan will appear. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 673. Narrated by Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, the people of Yemen have come to you, and they are more soft-hearted and gentle-hearted people. The capacity for understanding religion is Yemenite and wisdom is Yemenite. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 674. Narrated by Alqamah, we were sitting with Ibn Masud when Kebab came and said, O Abu Abdurrahman! Can these young fellows recite Quran as you do? Ibn Masud said, if you wish I can order one of them to recite Quran for you. Kebab replied, yes. Ibn Masud said, recite, O Alqamah. On that, Zayd bin Hudair, the brother of Ziyad bin Hudair said, to Ibn Masud, why have you ordered Alqamah to recite though he does not recite better than we? Ibn Masud said, if you like, I would tell you what the Prophet said about your nation and his, i.e. Alqamah's, nation. So I recited 50 verses from Surah Maryam. Abdullah bin Masud said to Kebab, what do you think about Alqamah's recitation? Kebab said, he has recited well. Abdullah said, whatever I recite, Alqamah recites. Then Abdullah turned towards Kebab and saw that he was wearing a gold ring, whereupon he said, hasn't the time for its throwing away come yet? Kebab said, you will not see me wearing it after today, and he throw it away. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 675. Narrated by Abu Huraira, Tufail bin Amr came to the Prophet and said, the Das, nation, have perished as they disobeyed and refused to accept Islam. So invoke Allah against them. But the Prophet said, O Allah! Give guidance to the Das, tribe, and bring them, to Islam. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 676. Narrated by Abu Huraira, when I came to the Prophet said on my way, oh what a long tedious tiresome night, nevertheless, it has rescued me from the place of heathenism. A slave of mine ran away on the way. When I reached the Prophet I gave him the oath of allegiance, for Islam, and while I was sitting with him, suddenly the slave appeared. The Prophet said to me, O Abu Huraira, here is your slave. I said, he, i.e. the slave, is free, for Allah's sake, and manumit him. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 677. Narrated by Adi bin Hatim, we came to Umar in a delegation, during his rule. He started calling the men one by one, calling each by his name. As he did not call me early, I said to him, "Don't you know me, O chief of the believers?" He said, "Yes, you embraced Islam when they, i.e. your people, disbelieved. You have come to the truth when they ran away. You fulfilled your promises when they broke theirs, and you recognized it, i.e. the truth of Islam, when they denied it." On that, I said, "I therefore don't care." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 678. Narrated by Aisha, we went out with Allah's Apostle during Hajjatul Wada and we assumed the ihram for Umrah. Then Allah's Apostle said to us, "Whoever has got the Hadi should assume the ihram for Hajj and Umrah and should not finish his ihram till he has performed both, Umrah and Hajj." I arrived at Mecca along with him, i.e. the Prophet, while I was menstruating, so I did not perform the tawaf around the Kaaba or between Safa and Marwa. I informed Allah's Apostle about that and he said, "Undo your braids and comb your hair, and then assume the ihram for Hajj and leave the Umrah." I did so, and when we performed and finished the Hajj, Allah's Apostle sent me to At-Tanim along with my brother, Abdurrahman bin Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, to perform the Umrah. The Prophet said, "This Umrah is in lieu of your missed Umrah." Those who had assumed the ihram for Umrah, performed the tawaf around the Kaaba and between Safa and Marwa, and then finished their ihram, and on their return from Mina, they performed another tawaf, around the Kaaba and between Safa and Marwa, but those who combined their Hajj and Umrah, performed only one tawaf, between Safa and Marwa, for both. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 679. Narrated by Ibn Jurayj, Atta said, Ibn Abbas said, "If he, i.e. the one intending to perform Umrah, has performed the tawaf around the Kaaba, his ihram is considered to have finished." Said, "What proof does Ibn Abbas has as to the saying?" Atta said, "The proof is taken from the statement of Allah, and afterwards they are brought for sacrifice unto ancient house, Kaaba at Mecca, 22.33, and from the order of the Prophet to his companions to finish their ihram during Hajjatul Wada." I said, to Atta, that, i.e. finishing the ihram, was after coming from Arafat. Atta said, Ibn Abbas used to allow it before going to Arafat, after finishing the Umrah, and after coming from it, i.e. after performing the Hajj. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 680. Narrated by Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, I came to the Prophet at a place called Al-Bayda. The Prophet said, "Did you assume the ihram for Hajj?" I said, "Yes." He said, "How did you express your intention for performing Hajj?" I said, "Labayk, i.e. I am ready to assume the ihram with the same intention as that of Allah's Apostle." The Prophet said, "Perform the tawaf around the Kaaba and between Safa and Marwa, and then finish your ihram." So I performed the tawaf around the Kaaba and between Safa and Marwa, and then I came to a woman from the tribe of Qais who removed the lice from my head. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 681. Narrated by Hafsa, the wife of the Prophet ordered all his wives to finish their ihram during the year of Hajjatul Wada. On that, I asked the Prophet, "What stops you from finishing your ihram?" He said, "I have matted my hair and garlanded my hadi. So I will not finish my ihram unless I have slaughtered my hadi." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 682. Narrated by Ibn Abbas, a woman from the tribe of Qatham asked for the verdict of Allah's Apostle, regarding something, during Hajjatul Wada while Al-Fadl bin Abbas was the companion rider behind Allah's Apostle. She asked, Allah's ordained obligation, i.e. compulsory Hajj, enjoined on his slaves has become due on my old father who cannot sit firmly on the riding animal. Will it be sufficient if I perform the Hajj on his behalf? He said, yes. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 683. Narrated by Abdullah bin Umar, the Prophet arrived at Mecca in the year of the conquest of Mecca, while Usama was riding behind him on his she-camel. Al-Kasway, Bilal and Uthman bin Talha were accompanying him. When he made his she-camel kneel down near the Kaaba, he said to Uthman, "Get us the key of the Kaaba." He brought the key to him and opened the gate of the Kaaba for him. The Prophet, Usama, Bilal, and Uthman bin Talha entered the Kaaba and then closed the gate behind them from inside. The Prophet stayed there for a long period and then came out. The people rushed to get in, but I went in before them and found Bilal standing behind the gate, and I said to him, "Where did the Prophet pray?" He said, "He prayed between those two front pillars." The Kaaba was built on 6 pillars, arranged in 2 rows, and he prayed between the 2 pillars of the front row, leaving the gate of the Kaaba at his back and facing, in prayer, the wall which faces one when one enters the Kaaba. Between him and that wall was the distance of about 3 cubits. But I forgot to ask Bilal about the number of rakat the Prophet had prayed. There was a red piece of marble at the place where he, i.e. the Prophet, had offered the prayer. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 684. Narrated by Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, Safiyyah bin Huway, the wife of the Prophet menstruated during Hajjatul Wada. The Prophet said, "Is she going to detain us?" I said to him, "She has already come to Mecca and performed the tawaf, al-ifada, around the Kaaba, O Allah's apostle." The Prophet said, "Let her then proceed on, to Medina." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 685. Narrated by Ibn Umar, we were talking about Hajjatul Wada, while the Prophet was amongst us. We did not know what Hajjatul Wada signified. The Prophet praised Allah and then mentioned Al-Masih ad-Dajjal and described him extensively, saying, Allah did not send any prophet but that prophet warned his nation of Al-Masih ad-Dajjal. Noah and the prophets following him warned their people of him. He will appear amongst you, O Muhammad's followers, and if it happens that some of his qualities may be hidden from you, but your Lord's state is clear to you and not hidden from you. The Prophet said it thrice. Verily, your Lord is not blind in one eye, while he, i.e. ad-Dajjal, is blind in the right eye, which looks like a grape bulging out of its cluster. No doubt, Allah has made your blood and your properties sacred to one another, like the sanctity of this day of yours, in this town of yours, in this month of yours. The Prophet added, "No doubt. Haven't I conveyed Allah's message to you?" They replied, "Yes." The Prophet said thrice, "O Allah, be witness for it." The Prophet added, "Woe to you!" Or said, "May Allah be merciful to you. Do not become infidels after me, i.e. my death, by cutting the necks, throats, of one another." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 686. Narrated by Zayd bin Arqam, the Prophet fought 19 ghazwas and performed only one Hajj after he migrated to Medina, and did not perform another Hajj after it, and that was Hajj al-Wada. Abu Ishaq said, he performed when he was in Mecca. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 687. Narrated by Jarir, the Prophet ordered me during Hajjatul Wada. Ask the people to listen. He then said, "Do not become infidels after me by cutting the necks, throats, of one another." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 688. Narrated by Abu Bakr, the Prophet said, "Time has taken its original shape which it had when Allah created the heavens and the earth. The year is of 12 months, 4 of which are sacred, and out of these, 4, 3 are in succession, i.e. Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah and Al-Muharram, and the fourth is Rajab, which is named after the Madar tribe, between the month of Jamada, Adh Thania, and Shaban. Then the Prophet asked, which is this month? We said, Allah and his apostle know better. On that the Prophet kept quiet so long that we thought that he might name it with another name. Then the Prophet said, isn't it the month of Dhul Hijjah? We replied, yes. Then he said, which town is this? We replied, Allah and his apostle know better. On that he kept quiet so long that we thought that he might name it with another name. Then he said, isn't it the town of Mecca? We replied, yes. Then he said, which day is today? We replied, Allah and his apostle know better. He kept quiet so long that we thought that he might name it with another name. Then he said, isn't it the day of an-nahr, i.e. sacrifice? We replied, yes. He said, so your blood, your properties, the sub-narrator Muhammad said, I think the Prophet also said, and your honor, are sacred to one another like the sanctity of this day of yours, in this city of yours, in this month of yours, and surely, you will meet your Lord, and he will ask you about your deeds. Beware. Do not become infidels after me, cutting the throats of one another. It is incumbent on those who are present to convey this message, of mine, to those who are absent. Maybe that some of those to whom it will be conveyed will understand it better than those who have actually heard it. The sub-narrator, Muhammad, on remembering that narration, used to say, Muhammad spoke the truth. He, i.e. Prophet, then added twice, no doubt. Haven't I conveyed Allah's message to you? Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 689. Narrated by Tariq bin Shihab, some Jews said, had this verse been revealed to us, we would have taken that day as Eid, festival. Umar said, what verse? They said, this day I have perfected your religion for you, completed my favor upon you and have chosen for you Islam as your religion. 5.3, Umar said, I know the place where it was revealed while Allah's apostle was staying at Arafat. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 690. Narrated by Aisha, we set out with Allah's apostle, and some of us assumed the Ihram for Umrah, some assumed it for Hajj, and some assumed it for both Hajj and Umrah. Allah's apostle assumed the Ihram for Hajj. So those who had assumed the Ihram for Hajj or for both Hajj and Umrah, did not finish their Ihram till the day of an-nahr, i.e. slaughter of sacrifices. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 691. Narrated by Malik, the same as above, Hadith 690, saying, we set out, with Allah's apostle in Hajjatul Wada. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 692. Narrated by Malik, the same as above, Hadith 690. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 693. Narrated by Sa'd, the Prophet visited me during Hajjat al-Wada while I was suffering from a disease which brought me to the verge of death. I said, O Allah's apostle, my ailment has reached such a bad state as you see, and I have much wealth, but I have no one to inherit from me except my only daughter. Shall I give 2/3 of my property as alms, in charity? The Prophet said, no. I said, shall I give half of my property as alms? He said, no. I said, shall I give 1/3 of it? He replied, 1/3, and even 1/3 is too much. It is better for you to leave your inheritors wealthy rather than to leave them poor, begging people, for their sustenance, and whatever you spend for Allah's sake, you will get reward for it even for the morsel of food which you put in your wife's mouth. I said, O Allah's apostle, should I remain, in Mecca, behind my companions, who are going with you to Medina? The Prophet said, if you remain behind, Any good deed which you will do for Allah's sake, will upgrade and elevate you. Maybe you will live longer so that some people may benefit by you and some other, i.e. infidels, may get harmed by you. The Prophet then added, O Allah! Complete the migration of my companions and do not turn them on their heels. But the poor Sa'd bin Khawla, not the above mentioned Sa'd, died in Mecca. Allah's apostle pitied Sa'd for he died in Mecca. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 694. Narrated by Ibn Umar, the Prophet got his head shaved during Hajjatul Wada. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 695. Narrated by Ibn Umar, during Hajjatul Wada, the Prophet and some of his companions got their heads shaved while some of his companions got their hair cut short. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 696. Narrated by Abdullah bin Abbas, that he came riding a donkey when Allah's apostle was standing at Mina during Hajjatul Wada, leading the people in prayer. The donkey passed in front of a part of the row, of the people offering the prayer. Then he dismounted from it and took his position in the row with the people. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 697. Narrated by Hisham's father, in my presence, Usama was asked about the speed of the Prophet during his Hajj. He replied, it was al-anak, i.e. moderate easy speed, and if he encountered an open space, he used to increase his speed. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 698. Narrated by Abdullah bin Yazid al-Khatmi, that Abu Ayyub informed him that he offered the Maghrib and Isha prayers together with the Prophet during Hajjatul Wada. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 699. Narrated by Abu Musa, my companions sent me to Allah's apostle to ask him for some animals to ride on as they were accompanying him in the army of Al-Usra, and that was the Ghazwa, battle, of Tabuk. I said, O Allah's Prophet! My companions have sent me to you to provide them with means of transportation. He said, by Allah! I will not make you ride anything. It happened that when I reached him, he was in an angry mood, and I didn't notice it. So I returned in a sad mood because of the refusal the Prophet and for the fear that the Prophet might have become angry with me. So I returned to my companions and informed them of what the Prophet had said. Only a short while had passed when I heard Bilal calling, O Abdullah bin Qais. I replied to his call. Bilal said, respond to Allah's apostle who is calling you. When I went to him, i.e. the Prophet, he said, take these 2 camels tied together and also these 2 camels tied together, referring to 6 camels he had brought them from Sa'd at that time. The Prophet added, take them to your companions and say, Allah, or Allah's apostle, allows you to ride on these, so ride on them. So I took those camels to them and said, the Prophet allows you to ride on these, camels, but by Allah, I will not leave you till some of you proceed with me to somebody who heard the statement of Allah's apostle. Do not think that I narrate to you a thing which Allah's apostle has not said. They said to me, we consider you truthful, and we will do what you like. The sub-narrator added, so Abu Musa proceeded along with some of them till they came to those who have heard the statement of Allah's apostle wherein he denied them, some animals to ride on, and, his statement, whereby he gave them the same. So these people told them the same information as Abu Musa had told them. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 700. Narrated by Sa'd, Allah's apostle set out for Tabuk, appointing Ali as his deputy, in Medina. Ali said, do you want to leave me with the children and women? The Prophet said, will you not be pleased that you will be to me like Aaron to Moses? But there will be no prophet after me. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 701. Narrated by Safwan bin Ya'la bin Umayyah, that his father said, I participated in Al-Usra, i.e. Tabuk, along with the Prophet. Ya'la added, my participation in, that ghazwah was the best of my deeds to me. Ya Allah said, I had a laborer who quarreled with somebody, and one of the two bit the hand of the other. Atta, the sub-narrator, said, Safwan told me who bit whom but I forgot it, and the one who was bitten, pulled his hand out of the mouth of the biter, so one of the incisors of the biter was broken. So we came to the Prophet and he considered the biter's claim as invalid, i.e. the biter did not get a recompense for his broken incisor. The Prophet said, should he leave his hand in your mouth so that you might snap it as if it were in the mouth of a male camel to snap it? Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 702. Narrated by Abdullah bin Ka'b bin Malik, who, from among Ka'b's sons, was the guide of Ka'b when he became blind. I heard Ka'b bin Malik narrating the story of the ghazwah of Tabuk in which he failed to take part. Ka'b said, I did not remain behind Allah's apostle in any ghazwah that he fought except the ghazwah of Tabuk, and I failed to take part in the ghazwah of Badr, but Allah did not admonish anyone who had not participated in it, for in fact, Allah's apostle had gone out in search of the caravan of Quraysh till Allah made them, i.e. the Muslims, and their enemy meet without any appointment. I witnessed the night of Al-Aqaba, pledge, with Allah's apostle when we pledged for Islam, and I would not exchange it for the Badr battle, although the Badr battle is more popular amongst the people than it, i.e. Al-Aqaba pledge. As for my news, in this battle of Tabuk, I had never been stronger or wealthier than I was when I remained behind the Prophet in that ghazwah. By Allah, never had I 2 she-camels before, but I had then at the time of this ghazwah. Whenever Allah's apostle wanted to make a ghazwah, he used to hide his intention by apparently referring to different ghazwah till it was the time of that ghazwah, of Tabuk, which Allah's apostle fought in severe heat, facing a long journey, desert, and the great number of enemy. So the Prophet announced to the Muslims clearly their destination, so that they might get prepared for their ghazwah. So he informed them clearly of the destination he was going to. Allah's apostle was accompanied by a large number of Muslims who could not be listed in a book, namely, a register. Kabi added, any man who intended to be absent would think that the matter would remain hidden unless Allah revealed it through divine revelation. So Allah's apostle fought that ghazwah at the time when the fruits had ripened and the shade looked pleasant. Allah's apostle and his companions prepared for the battle, and I started to go out in order to get myself ready along with them, but I returned without doing anything. I would say to myself, I can do that. So I kept on delaying it every now and then till the people got ready and Allah's apostle and the Muslims along with him departed, and I had not prepared anything for my departure, and I said, I will prepare myself for departure 1 or 2 days after him, and then join them. In the morning following their departure, I went out to get myself ready but returned having done nothing. Then again in the next morning, I went out to get ready but returned without doing anything. Such was the case with me till they hurried away and the battle was missed by me. Even then I intended to depart to take them over. I wish I had done so. But it was not in my luck. So, after the departure of Allah's apostle, whenever I went out and walked amongst the people, i.e., the remaining persons, it grieved me that I could see none around me, but one accused of hypocrisy or one of those weak men whom Allah had excused. Allah's apostle did not remember me till he reached Tabuk. So while he was sitting amongst the people in Tabuk, he said, what did Kabi do? A man from Banu Salama said, O Allah's apostle, he has been stopped by his 2 burdas, i.e. garments, and is looking at his own flanks with pride. Then Muadh bin Jabal said, what a bad thing you have said. By Allah, O Allah, a Euro trademark S apostle. We know nothing about him but good. Allah's apostle kept silent. Kabi bin Malik added, when I heard that he, i.e. the Prophet, was on his way back to Medina, I got dipped in my concern, and began to think of false excuses, saying to myself, how can I avoid his anger tomorrow? And I took the advice of wise member of my family in this matter. When it was said that Allah's apostle, had come near all the evil false excuses abandoned from my mind, and I knew well that I could never come out of this problem by forging a false statement. Then I decided firmly to speak the truth. So Allah's apostle arrived in the morning, and whenever he returned from a journey, he used to visit the mosque first of all and offer a 2-rak'at prayer therein and then sit for the people. So when he had done all that, this time, those who had failed to join the battle of Tabuk came and started offering false excuses and taking oaths before him. They were something over 80 men. Allah's apostle accepted the excuses they had expressed, took their pledge of allegiance, asked for Allah's forgiveness for them, and left the secrets of their hearts for Allah to judge. Then I came to him, and when I greeted him, he smiled a smile of an angry person and then said, "Come on." So I came walking till I sat before him. He said to me, "What stopped you from joining us? Had you not purchased an animal for carrying you?" I answered, "Yes, O Allah's apostle. But by Allah, if I were sitting before any person from among the people of the world other than you, I would have avoided his anger with an excuse. By Allah, I have been bestowed with the power of speaking fluently and eloquently, but by Allah, I knew well that if today I tell you a lie to seek your favor, Allah would surely make you angry with me in the near future, but if I tell you the truth, though you will get angry because of it, I hope for Allah's forgiveness. Really, by Allah, there was no excuse for me. By Allah, I had never been stronger or wealthier than I was when I remained behind you." Then Allah's apostle said, "As regards this man, he has surely told the truth. So get up till Allah decides your case." I got up, and many men of Banu Salama followed me and said to me, "By Allah, we never witnessed you doing any sin before this. Surely, you failed to offer excuse to Allah's apostle as the others who did not join him have offered. The prayer of Allah's apostle to Allah to forgive you would have been sufficient for you." By Allah, they continued blaming me so much that I intended to return to the Prophet and accuse myself of having told a lie, but I said to them, "Is there anybody else who has met the same fate as I have?" They replied, "Yes, there are 2 men who have said the same thing as you have, and to both of them was given the same order as given to you." I said, "Who are they?" They replied, "Murara bin Ar-Rabi al-Amri and Hilal bin Umayyah al-Waqafi." By that they mentioned to me 2 pious men who had attended the Ghazwa, battle, of Badr, and in whom there was an example for me. So I did not change my mind when they mentioned them to me. Allah's apostle forbade all the Muslims to talk to us, the 3 aforesaid persons out of all those who had remained behind in that Ghazwa. So we kept away from the people and they changed their attitude towards us till the very land, where I lived, appeared strange to me as if I did not know it. We remained in that condition for 50 nights. As regards my 2 fellows, they remained in their houses and kept on weeping, but I was the youngest of them and the firmest of them, so I used to go out and witness the prayers along with the Muslims and roam about in the markets, but none would talk to me, and I would come to Allah's apostle and greet him while he was sitting in his gathering after the prayer, and I would wonder whether the Prophet did move his lips in return to my greetings or not. Then I would offer my prayer near to him and look at him stealthily. When I was busy with my prayer, he would turn his face towards me, but when I turned my face to him, he would turn his face away from me. When this harsh attitude of the people lasted long, I walked till I scaled the wall of the garden of Abu Qatada, who was my cousin and dearest person to me, and I offered my greetings to him. By Allah, he did not return my greetings. I said, "O Abu Qatada, I beseech you by Allah. Do you know that I love Allah and His Apostle?" He kept quiet. I asked him again, beseeching him by Allah, but he remained silent. Then I asked him again in the name of Allah. He said, "Allah and His Apostle know it better." Thereupon my eyes flowed with tears and I returned and jumped over the wall. Kabi added, "While I was walking in the market of Medina, suddenly I saw a Nabati, i.e. a Christian farmer, from the Nabatis of Sham who came to sell his grains in Medina, saying, 'Who will lead me to Ka'b bin Malik?' The people began to point me, out for him till he came to me and handed me a letter from the king of Ghassan in which the following was written. To proceed, I have been informed that your friend, i.e. the Prophet, has treated you harshly. Anyhow, Allah does not let you live at a place where you feel inferior and your right is lost. So join us, and we will console you. When I read it, I said to myself, this is also a sort of a test. Then I took the letter to the oven and made a fire therein by burning it. When 40 out of the 50 nights elapsed, behold, there came to me the messenger of Allah's apostle and said, Allah's apostle orders you to keep away from your wife. I said, should I divorce her, or else, what should I do? He said, no, only keep aloof from her and do not cohabit her. The Prophet sent the same message to my 2 fellows. Then I said to my wife, go to your parents and remain with them till Allah gives his verdict in this matter. Ka'b added, the wife of Hilal bin Umayyah came to Apostle and said, O Allah's Apostle. Hilal bin Umayyah is a helpless old man who has no servant to attend on him. Do you dislike that I should serve him? He said, no, you can serve him, but he should not come near you. She said, by Allah, he has no desire for anything. By Allah, he has never ceased weeping till his case began till this day of his. On that, some of my family members said to me, will you also ask Allah's apostle to permit your wife to serve you, as he has permitted the wife of Hilal bin Umayyah to serve him? I said, by Allah, I will not ask the permission of Allah's apostle regarding her, for I do not know what Allah's apostle would say if I asked him to permit her to serve me, while I am a young man. Then I remained in that state for 10 more nights after that till the period of 50 nights was completed, starting from the time when Allah's apostle prohibited the people from talking to us. When I had offered the Fajr prayer on the 50th morning on the roof of one of our houses, and while I was sitting in the condition which Allah described in the Quran, i.e. my very soul seemed straightened to me and even the earth seemed narrow to me for all its spaciousness, there I heard the voice of one who had ascended the mountain of Salah calling with his loudest voice, O Ka'b bin Malik! Be happy, by receiving good tidings. I fell down in prostration before Allah, realizing that relief has come. Allah's apostle had announced the acceptance of our repentance by Allah when he had offered the Fajr prayer. The people then went out to congratulate us. Some bringers of good tidings went out to my 2 fellows, and a horseman came to me in haste, and a man of Banu Aslam came running and ascended the mountain, and his voice was swifter than the horse. When he, i.e. the man, whose voice I had heard, came to me conveying the good tidings, I took off my garments and dressed him with them, and by Allah, I owned no other garments than them on that day. Then I borrowed 2 garments and wore them and went to Allah's apostle. The people started receiving me in batches, congratulating me on Allah's acceptance of my repentance, saying, we congratulate you on Allah's acceptance of your repentance. Ka'b further said, when I entered the mosque, I saw Allah's apostle sitting with the people around him. Talha bin Ubaydullah swiftly came to me, shook hands with me and congratulated me. By Allah, none of the muhajirin, i.e. emigrants, got up for me except him, i.e. Talha, and I will never forget this for Talha. Ka'b added, when I greeted Allah's apostle, he, his face being bright with joy, said, be happy with the best day that you have got ever since your mother delivered you. Ka'b added, I said to the Prophet, is this forgiveness from you or from Allah? He said, no, it is from Allah. Whenever Allah's apostle became happy, his face would shine as if it were a piece of moon, and we all knew that characteristic of him. When I sat before him, I said, O Allah's apostle! Because of the acceptance of my repentance I will give up all my wealth as alms for the sake of Allah and his apostle. Allah's apostle said, keep some of your wealth, as it will be better for you. I said, so I will keep my share from Khaybar with me, and added, O Allah's apostle! Allah has saved me for telling the truth, so it is a part of my repentance not to tell but the truth as long as I am alive. By Allah, I do not know anyone of the Muslims whom Allah has helped for telling the truth more than me. Since I have mentioned that truth to Allah's apostle till today, I have never intended to tell a lie. I hope that Allah will also save me from telling lies the rest of my life. So Allah revealed to his apostle the verse. Verily, Allah has forgiven the Prophet, the muhajirin, i.e. emigrants, up to his saying, and be with those who are true, in word and deed. 9.117-119. By Allah, Allah has never bestowed upon me, apart from his guiding me to Islam, a greater blessing than the fact that I did not tell a lie to Allah's apostle, which would have caused me to perish as those who have told a lie perished, for Allah described those who told lies with the worst description he ever attributed to anybody else. Allah said, they, i.e. the hypocrites, will swear by Allah to you when you return to them, up to his saying, certainly Allah is not pleased with the rebellious people. 9.95-96, Ka'b added, we, the three persons, differed altogether from those whose excuses Allah's apostle accepted when they swore to him. He took their pledge of allegiance and asked Allah to forgive them, but Allah's apostle left our case pending till Allah gave his judgment about it. As for that, Allah said, and to the three, he did forgive also, who remained behind. 9.118. What Allah said, in this verse, does not indicate our failure to take part in the Ghazwa, but it refers to the deferment of making a decision by the Prophet about our case, in contrast to the case of those who had taken an oath before him and he excused them by accepting their excuses. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 703. Narrated by Ibn Umar, when the Prophet passed by Al-Hijr, he said, do not enter the dwelling places of those people who were unjust to themselves unless you enter in a weeping state, lest the same calamity as of theirs should befall you. Then he covered his head and made his speed fast till he crossed the valley. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 704. Narrated by Ibn Umar, Allah's apostle said to his companions who were at Al-Hijr, do not enter upon these people who are being punished, except in a weeping state, lest the same calamity as of theirs should befall you. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 705. Narrated by Urwa bin Al-Maghira, Al-Maghira bin Shubi'a, said, the Prophet went out to answer the call of nature and, when he had finished, I got up to pour water for him. I think that he said that the event had taken place during the Ghazwa of Tabuk. Al-Maghira added, the Prophet washed his face, and when he wanted to wash his forearms, the sleeves of his cloak became tight over them, so he took them out from underneath the cloak and then he washed them, i.e. his forearms, and passed wet hands over his cuffs. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 706. Narrated by Abu Humayd, we returned in the company of the Prophet from the Ghazwa of Tabuk, and when we looked upon Medina, the Prophet said, this is Taba, i.e. Medina, and this is Uhud, a mountain that loves us and is loved by us. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 707. Narrated by Anas bin Malik, Allah's apostle returned from the Ghazwa of Tabuk, and when he approached Medina, he said, there are some people in Medina who were with you all the time, you did not travel any portion of the journey nor crossed any valley, but they were with you. They, i.e. the people, said, O Allah's apostle, even though they were at Medina. He said, yes, because they were stopped by a genuine excuse. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 708. Narrated by Ibn Abbas, Allah's apostle sent a letter to Khosrau with Abdullah bin Hudhafa as-Sami and told him to hand it over to the governor of Al-Bahrain. The governor of Al-Bahrain handed it over to Khosrau, and when he read the letter, he tore it into pieces. The sub-narrator added, I think that Ibn al-Musayyib said, Allah's apostle invoked Allah to tear them all totally, Khosrau and his companions, into pieces. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 709. Narrated by Abu Bakr, during the days of the Battle of Al-Jamal, Allah benefited me with a word I had heard from Allah's apostle after I had been about to join the companions of Al-Jamal, i.e. the camel, and fight along with them. When Allah's apostle was informed that the Persians had crowned the daughter of Khosrau as their ruler, he said, "Such people as ruled by a lady will never be successful." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 710. Narrated by As-Saib bin Yazid, I remember that I went out with the boys to the place called Thaniyatul Wada to receive Allah's apostle. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 711. Narrated by As-Saib, I remember I went out with the boys to Thaniyatul Wada to receive the Prophet when he returned from the Ghazwa of Tabuk. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 712. Narrated by al-Fadl bint al-Harith, I heard the Prophet reciting Surat al-Mursalat Irfan, 77, in the Maghrib prayer, and after that prayer he did not lead us in any prayer till he died. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 713. Narrated by Ibn Abbas, Umar bin al-Khattab used to let Ibn Abbas sit beside him, so Abdurrahman bin Auf said to Umar, "We have sons similar to him." Umar replied, "I respect him, because of his status that you know." Umar then asked Ibn Abbas about the meaning of this holy verse, "When comes the help of Allah and the conquest of Mecca," 110.1. Ibn Abbas replied, "That indicated the death of Allah's apostle which Allah informed him of." Umar said, "I do not understand of it except what you understand." Narrated Aisha, the Prophet in his ailment in which he died, used to say, "O Aisha, I still feel the pain caused by the food I ate at Khaybar, and at this time, I feel as if my aorta is being cut from that poison." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 714. Narrated by Aisha, whenever Allah's apostle became ill, he used to recite Al-Muwahhidatayn, i.e. the last two surahs of the Quran, and then blow his breath and passed his hand over himself. When he had his fatal illness, I started reciting Al-Muwahhidatayn and blowing my breath over him as he used to do, and then I rubbed the hand of the Prophet over his body. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 715. Narrated by Aisha, I heard the Prophet and listened to him before his death while he was lying supported on his back, and he was saying, "O Allah, forgive me, and bestow your mercy on me, and let me meet the highest companions of the hereafter." See the Quran, 4.69, and see Hadith number 719. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 716. Narrated by Ibn Abbas, Thursday. And how great that Thursday was! The ailment of Allah's apostle became worse, on Thursday, and he said, "Fetch me something so that I may write to you something after which you will never go astray." The people, present there, differed in this matter, and it was not right to differ before a prophet. Some said, "What is wrong with him? Do you think he is delirious, seriously ill? Ask him, to understand his state." So they went to the Prophet and asked him again. The Prophet said, "Leave me, for my present state is better than what you call me for." Then he ordered them to do three things. He said, "Turn the pagans out of the Arabian Peninsula, respect and give gifts to the foreign delegations as you have seen me dealing with them." Said Ben Jubair, the sub-narrator said that Ibn Abbas kept quiet as rewards the third order, or he said, "I forgot it." See Hadith number 116 Volume 1. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 717. Narrated by Ubaydullah bin Abdullah, Ibn Abbas said, when Allah's apostle was on his deathbed and there were some men in the house, he said, "Come near, I will write for you something after which you will not go astray." Some of them, i.e. his companions, said, "Allah's apostle is seriously ill and you have the Holy Quran. Allah's book is sufficient for us." So the people in the house differed and started disputing. Some of them said, "Give him writing material so that he may write for you something after which you will not go astray," while the others said the other way round. So when their talk and differences increased, Allah's apostle said, "Get up." Ibn Abbas used to say, "No doubt, it was very unfortunate, a great disaster, that Allah's apostle was prevented from writing for them that writing because of their differences and noise." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 718. Narrated by Aisha, the Prophet called Fatima during his fatal illness and told her something secretly, and she wept. Then he called her again and told her something secretly, and she started laughing. When we asked her about that, she said, "The Prophet first told me secretly that he would expire in that disease in which he died, so I wept. Then he told me secretly that I would be the first of his family to follow him, so I laughed, at that time." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 719. Narrated by Aisha, used to hear, from the Prophet, that no prophet dies till he is given the option to select either the worldly life or the life of the hereafter. I heard the Prophet in his fatal disease, with his voice becoming hoarse, saying, "In the company of those on whom is the grace of Allah." To the end of the verse. 4.69, thereupon I thought that the Prophet had been given the option. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 720. Narrated by Aisha, when the Prophet fell ill in his fatal illness, he started saying, "With the highest companion." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 721. Narrated by Aisha, when Allah's apostle was in good health, he used to say, "Never does a prophet die unless he is shown his place in paradise, before his death, and then he is made alive or given option." When the Prophet became ill and his last moments came while his head was on my thigh, he became unconscious, and when he came to his senses, he looked towards the roof of the house and then said, "O Allah, please let me be with the highest companion." Thereupon I said, "Hence he is not going to stay with us." Then I came to know that his state was the confirmation of the narration he used to mention to us while he was in good health. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 722. Narrated by Aisha, Abdurrahman bin Abu Bakr entered upon the Prophet while I was supporting the Prophet on my chest. Abdurrahman had a fresh siwak then and he was cleaning his teeth with it. Allah's apostle looked at it, so I took the siwak, cut it, chewed it with my teeth, shook it and made it soft, with water, and then gave it to the Prophet, who cleaned his teeth with it. I had never seen Allah's apostle cleaning his teeth in a better way. After finishing the brushing of his teeth, he lifted his hand or his finger and said thrice, "O Allah, let me be with the highest companions," and then died. Aisha used to say, "He died while his head was resting between my chest and chin." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 723. Narrated by Aisha, whenever Allah's apostle became ill, he used to recite the mu'awwidhatayn and blow his breath over himself, after their recitation, and rubbed his hands over his body. So when he was afflicted with his fatal illness, I started reciting the mu'awwidhatayn and blowing my breath over him as he used to blow, and made the hand of the Prophet pass over his body. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 724. Narrated by Aisha, I heard the Prophet and listened to him before his death while he was leaning his back on me and saying, "O Allah, forgive me, and bestow your mercy on me, and let me meet the companions." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 725. Narrated by Urwa bin Zubair, Aisha said, the Prophet said during his fatal illness, "Allah cursed the Jews for they took the graves of their prophets as places for worship." Aisha added, "Had it not been for that statement of the Prophet, his grave would have been made conspicuous. But he was afraid that it might be taken as a place for worship." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 726. Narrated by Aisha, the Prophet died while he was between my chest and chin, so I never disliked the death agony for anyone after the Prophet. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 727. Narrated by Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, when the ailment of Allah's apostle became aggravated, he requested his wives to permit him to be treated, nursed in my house, and they gave him permission. He came out to my house, walking between two men with his feet dragging on the ground, between Abbas bin Abdul Muttalib and another man. Ubaydullah said, I told Abdullah of what Aisha had said. Abdullah bin Abbas said to me, do you know who is the other man whom Aisha did not name? I said, no. Ibn Abbas said, it was Ali bin Abu Talib. Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, used to narrate saying, when Allah's apostle entered my house and his disease became aggravated, he said, pour on me the water of 7 water skins, the mouths of which have not been untied, so that I may give advice to the people. So we let him sit in a big basin belonging to Hafsa, the wife of the Prophet, and then started to pour water on him from these water skins till he started pointing to us with his hands, intending to say, you have done your job. Aisha added, then he went out to the people and led them in prayer and preached to them. Aisha and Abdullah bin Abbas said, when Allah's apostle became ill seriously, he started covering his face with his woolen sheet, and when he felt short of breath, he removed it from his face and said, that is so. Allah's curse be on the Jews and the Christians, as they took the graves of their prophets as places of worship, intending to warn the Muslims of what they had done. Aisha added, I argued with Allah's apostle repeatedly about that matter, i.e. his order that Abu Bakr should lead the people in prayer in his place when he was ill, and what made me argue so much was that it never occurred to my mind that after the Prophet, the people would ever love a man who had taken his place, and I felt that anybody standing in his place would be a bad omen to the people, so I wanted Allah's apostle to give up the idea of choosing Abu Bakr to lead the people in prayer. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 728. Narrated by Abdullah bin Abbas, Ali bin Abu Talib came out of the house of Allah's apostle during his fatal illness. The people asked, O Abu Hassan, i.e. Ali, how is the health of Allah's apostle this morning? Ali replied, he has recovered with the grace of Allah. Abbas bin Abdul Muttalib held him by the hand and said to him, in 3 days you, by Allah, will be ruled by somebody else, and by Allah, I feel that Allah's apostle will die from this ailment of his, for I know how the faces of the offspring of Abdul Muttalib look at the time of their death. So let us go to Allah's apostle and ask him who will take over the caliphate. If it is given to us we will know as to it, and if it is given to somebody else, we will inform him so that he may tell the new ruler to take care of us. Ali said, by Allah, if we asked Allah's apostle for it, i.e. the caliphate, and he denied it us, the people will never give it to us after that. And by Allah, I will not ask Allah's apostle for it. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 729. Narrated by Anas bin Malik, while the Muslims were offering the Fajr prayer on Monday and Abu Bakr was leading them in prayer, suddenly Allah's apostle lifted the curtain of Aisha's dwelling and looked at them while they were in the rows of the prayers and smiled. Abu Bakr retreated to join the row, thinking that Allah's apostle wanted to come out for the prayer. The Muslims were about to be put to trial in their prayer, i.e. were about to give up praying, because of being overjoyed at seeing Allah's apostle. But Allah's apostle beckoned them with his hand to complete their prayer and then entered the dwelling and let fall the curtain. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 730. Narrated by Aisha, it was one of the favors of Allah towards me that Allah's apostle expired in my house on the day of my turn while he was leaning against my chest, and Allah made my saliva mix with his saliva at his death. Abdurrahman entered upon me with a siwak in his hand, and I was supporting the back of Allah's apostle against my chest. I saw the Prophet looking at it, i.e. siwak, and I knew that he loved the siwak, so I said to him, "Shall I take it for you?" He nodded in agreement. So I took it, and it was too stiff for him to use, so I said, "Shall I soften it for you?" He nodded his approval. So I softened it, and he cleaned his teeth with it. In front of him there was a jug or a tin, the sub-narrator, Umar is in doubt as to which was right, containing water. He started dipping his hand in the water and rubbing his face with it. He said, "None has the right to be worshipped except Allah. Death has its agonies." He then lifted his hands towards the sky, and started saying, "With the highest companion," till he expired and his hand dropped down. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 731. Narrated by Urway, Aisha said, Allah's apostle in his fatal illness, used to ask, "Where will I be tomorrow? Where will I be tomorrow?" seeking Aisha's turn. His wives allowed him to stay wherever he wished. So he stayed at Aisha's house till he expired while he was with her. Aisha added, "The Prophet expired on the day of my turn in my house, and he was taken unto Allah while his head was against my chest and his saliva mixed with my saliva." Aisha added, Abdurrahman bin Abu Bakr came in, carrying a siwak he was cleaning his teeth with. Allah's apostle looked at it, and I said to him, "O Abdurrahman, give me this siwak." So he gave it to me, and I cut it, chewed it, its end, and gave it to Allah's apostle, who cleaned his teeth with it while he was resting against my chest. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 732. Narrated by Aisha, the Prophet expired in my house and on the day of my turn, leaning against my chest. One of us, i.e. the Prophet's wives, used to recite a prayer asking Allah to protect him from all evils when he became sick. So I started asking Allah to protect him from all evils, by reciting a prayer. He raised his head towards the sky and said, "With the highest companions, with the highest companions." Abdurrahman bin Abu Bakr passed carrying a fresh leaf stalk of a date palm, and the Prophet looked at it, and I thought that the Prophet was in need of it, for cleaning his teeth. So I took it, from Abdurrahman, and chewed its head and shook it and gave it to the Prophet, who cleaned his teeth with it, in the best way he had ever cleaned his teeth, and then he gave it to me, and suddenly his hand dropped down, or it fell from his hand, i.e. he expired. So Allah made my saliva mix with his saliva on his last day on earth and his first day in the hereafter. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 733. Narrated by Aisha, Abu Bakr came from his house at As-Sun on a horse. He dismounted and entered the mosque, but did not speak to the people till he entered upon Aisha, and went straight to Allah's apostle, who was covered with hubr cloth, i.e. a kind of Yemenite cloth. He then uncovered the Prophet's face and bowed over him and kissed him and wept, saying, "Let my father and mother be sacrificed for you. By Allah, Allah will never cause you to die twice. As for the death which was written for you, has come upon you." Narrated Ibn Abbas, Abu Bakr went out while Umar bin al-Khattab was talking to the people. Abu Bakr said, "Sit down, O Umar." But Umar refused to sit down. So the people came to Abu Bakr and left Umar. Abu Bakr said, "To proceed, if anyone amongst you used to worship Muhammad, then Muhammad is dead, but if anyone of you used to worship Allah, then Allah is alive and shall never die." Allah said, "Muhammad is no more than an apostle, and indeed, many apostles have passed away before him, till the end of the verse. Allah will reward to those who are thankful." 3.144, By Allah, it was as if the people never knew that Allah had revealed this verse before till Abu Bakr recited it, and all the people received it from him, and I heard everybody reciting it, then. Narrated Az-Zuri, said bin al-Musayyib told me that Umar said, "By Allah, when I heard Abu Bakr reciting it, my legs could not support me, and I fell down at the very moment of hearing him reciting it, declaring that the Prophet had died." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 734. Narrated by Aisha and Ibn Abbas, Abu Bakr kissed the Prophet after his death. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 735. Narrated by Aisha, we poured medicine in one side of the Prophet's mouth during his illness and he started pointing to us, meaning to say, "Don't pour medicine in my mouth." We said, "He says so, because a patient dislikes medicines." When he improved and felt a little better, he said, "Didn't I forbid you to pour medicine in my mouth?" We said, "We thought it was because of the dislike patients have for medicines." He said, "Let everyone present in the house be given medicine by pouring it in his mouth while I am looking at him, except Abbas, as he has not witnessed you doing the same to me." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 736. Narrated by Al-Aswad, it was mentioned in the presence of Aisha that the Prophet had appointed Ali as successor by will. Thereupon she said, "Who said so?" I saw the Prophet, while I was supporting him against my chest. He asked for a tray, and then fell on one side and expired, and I did not feel it. So how do the people say, he appointed Ali as his successor? Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 737. Narrated by Talha, I asked Abdullah bin Abu Awfa, "Did the Prophet make a will?" He replied, "No." I further asked, "How comes it that the making of a will was enjoined on the people, or that they were ordered to make it?" He said, "The Prophet made a will concerning Allah's book." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 738. Narrated by Amir bin al-Harith, Allah's apostle did not leave a dinar or a dirham or a male or a female slave. He left only his white mule on which he used to ride, and his weapons, and a piece of land which he gave in charity for the needy travelers. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 739. Narrated by Anas, when the ailment of the Prophet got aggravated, he became unconscious, whereupon Fatima said, "Oh, how distressed my father is." He said, "Your father will have no more distress after today." When he expired, she said, "O father, who has responded to the call of the Lord, who has invited him? O father, whose dwelling place is the garden of paradise, i.e. Al-Firdaus. O father, we convey this news, of your death, to Gabriel." When he was buried, Fatima said, "O Anas, do you feel pleased to throw earth over Allah's apostle?" Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 740. Narrated by Aisha, when the Prophet was healthy, he used to say, "No soul of a prophet is captured till he is shown his place in paradise, and then he is given the option." When death approached him while his head was on my thigh, he became unconscious and then recovered his consciousness. He then looked at the ceiling of the house and said, "O Allah, with the highest companions." I said to myself, "Hence, he is not going to choose us." Then I realized that what he had said was the application of the narration which he used to mention to us when he was healthy. The last word he spoke was, "O Allah, with the highest companion." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 741. Narrated by Aisha and Ibn Abbas, the Prophet stayed for 10 years in Mecca with the Quran being revealed to him, and he stayed in Medina for 10 years. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 742. Narrated by Aisha, Allah's apostle died when he was 63 years of age. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 743. Narrated by Aisha, the Prophet died while his armor was mortgaged to a Jew for 30 essays of barley. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 744. Narrated by Salim's father, the Prophet appointed Usama as the commander of the troops, to be sent to Syria. The Muslims spoke about Usama unfavorably. The Prophet said, "I have been informed that you spoke about Usama. Let it be known that, he is the most beloved of all people to me. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 745. Narrated by Abdullah bin Umar, Allah's apostle sent troops appointed Usama bin Zayd as their commander. The people criticized his leadership. Allah's apostle got up and said, "If you, people, are criticizing his, i.e. Usama's, leadership, you used to criticize the leadership of his father before. By Allah, he, i.e. Zayd, deserved the leadership indeed, and he used to be one of the most beloved persons to me, and now this, i.e. his son, Usama, is one of the most beloved persons to me after him." Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 746. Narrated by Ibn Abu Habib, Abu al-Khair said, "As Sanabi, I asked, me, when did you migrate?" I.e. Abu al-Khair, said, "We went out from Yemen as emigrants and arrived at Al-Hufa, and there came a rider whom I asked about the news. The rider said, 'We buried the Prophet 5 days ago.' I asked, as Sanabihi, 'Did you hear anything about the night of Qadr?' He replied, 'Bilal, the muaddin of the Prophet informed me that it is on one of the 7 nights of the last 10 days, of Ramadan.' Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 747. Narrated by Abu Ishaq, I asked Zayd bin al-Arqam, "In how many ghazawat did you take part in the company of Allah's apostle?" He replied, 17. I further asked, "How many ghazawat did the Prophet fight?" He replied, 19. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 748. Narrated by Al-Bara, I fought 15 ghazawat in the company of the Prophet. Sahih Bukhari Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith number 749. Narrated by Burayda, that he fought 16 ghazawat with Allah's apostle.